This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Michael Greger, the physician, best-selling author, and speaker who advocates a plant-based, whole foods diet to reverse and prevent fatal disease and illness. You're a graduate of Cornell University and the Tufts University School of Medicine, and your New York Times best-selling book, How Not to Die, examines the 15 top causes of death in America. You've appeared in numerous documentary films, including What the Health, Prescription Nutrition, and Eating You Alive. And your website, nutritionfacts.org, has thousands of videos giving research-based advice about specific foods and health-related issues. Dr. Greger, welcome to London Real.
I'm so excited to be here.
I am excited to have you. I was wondering, before we get into all this good stuff, and we got a lot to talk about, when you're about to land in London Heathrow and you're thinking, okay, I'm going back to see the Brits, how do we rank in the world when it comes to our diets compared to, say, the Yanks or third world countries or anything? How are we doing here?
Well, like the U.S., according to the Global Burden of Disease Study, which is the largest study of disease risk factors in human history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the number one cause of death and disability among Britons is the British diet. And the same thing in the United States, the American diet. Number one cause of death, bumping tobacco smoking to number two. Now, cigarettes only kill 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills hundreds of thousands more. So when you think about, physical inactivity, not getting enough exercise, smoking, all that ranks below diet, both in the UK and in the US. But that's great news. That means we have tremendous control over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors. So that's great.
Okay, and so most G20 countries are suffering from the same problem. They've got an abundance of foods, they're making the wrong choices. Is that usually what's happening?
Yeah, and so infectious diseases. So people used to die of infectious. So you go back 100 years ago, right? The leading cause of death of things like pneumonia. That was before antibiotics. So now, and modern medicine is great with those kind of acute conditions. You have an infection, antibiotics can cure you. You have a broken legs, we can set it. There's all sorts of neat surgeries that you can do. But for chronic disease, and that's really what's, these are the plagues. These are the kind of the pandemics of diabetes and obesity and heart disease and hypertension. That's what's killing us now. And unfortunately, medicine has little to offer, right? We can kind of slow down the rate at which you die from diabetes. We can slow down the rate at which you go blind, at which you lose your kidney function, go on dialysis, slow down the rate at which you, get lower limb amputations. But in terms of stopping the disease, preventing the disease in the first place, or reversing the disease, unfortunately, mainstream medicine has very little to offer because these are lifestyle diseases, right? So yeah, you can treat the symptoms. You can artificially lower people's blood pressures with blood pressure medications, but why not treat the cause in the first place, which is these inflamed, crippled arteries, because primarily what we're eating, although certainly cigarette smoke plays a role too. So, lifestyle diseases, if that's what causes it, you can't eat the same foods that cause the disease if you expect to stop and reverse it. But that's the exciting thing, is that many of the leading killers. So here, heart disease, the number two killer of Brits, preventable, arrestable, reversible with a plant-based diet. And we've known this. This is the shocking, right? So The Lancet, probably the most prestigious medical journal in the world, published here in the UK, July 23rd, 1990. Published Dr. Dean Ornish's lifestyle heart trial. That was really the landmark trial that proved for the first time ever, using something called quantitative angiography, that indeed heart disease could be reversed. Arteries opened up without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program. Since that day, no one else should have died in this or any other country from heart disease. We had the cure, yet hundreds of thousands of people continue to die from this preventable, arrestable, reversible condition, right? Number 11 killer Brits, type 2 diabetes. Number 12 killer Brits, high blood pressure. These are diseases that can be reversed, cured through diet and lifestyle changes alone. So why do people continue to die? People should be upset, should be angry that, wait a second, are you telling me my, father didn't have to die? Wait a second, he had type 2 diabetes, got worse, and died, right? Unfortunately, doctors aren't taught nutrition, right? There's this, doctors suffer from a severe nutrition deficiency in education. We just weren't taught about this. And so we kind of graduate without this powerful tool in our medical toolbox. And so that's why I've kind of made it my mission to get out there and show physicians that they have a broader array of tools and go directly to the patients themselves. When it comes to safe, side effect-free, simple solutions like stopping smoking, eat healthy, you don't need your doctor to tell you to do that. You can, take control of your own life and your family's health.
And you are on a mission. And like the titles of the chapters of these book are pretty plain and simple. How not to die from heart disease, how not to die from lung disease, how not to die from brain diseases, how not to die from diabetes. And it's all about advocating this plant-based diet. Is that correct?
Plant-based diet and lifestyle. So I talk about exercise, talk about the importance of smoking cessation, I talk about, sleep, but certainly diet is the number one most powerful thing we can do in terms of modulating our risk for chronic disease.
Okay, I look across the Atlantic, Americans more obese than ever,
Ugh.
on their way to death, more information than ever, more money than ever.
Yeah.
Why aren't people listening? Is it because they ultimately don't want to be told what to eat? They don't like their pleasures? Or they're just not educated? What is it? Because you're beating your head against a wall.
Right.
It seems like it's bloody, but you're still doing it, getting your message out there. What ultimately you think it keeps people from just taking those changes?
Right. Well, they're just confused. They don't know. And the industry wants it that way. This is a standard tobacco industry tactic. Muddy the water, misinformation, right? Such that, so one day coffee's good for you, one day coffee's bad for you. Time magazine put "butter is back" on the cover. Shows you how desperate they are for dwindling print sales, right? Sells a lot of copies, but sells the public short, right? And so people love hearing good news about bad habits, right? If someone comes out with a diet book saying, broccoli is really good for you, how many books is that going to sell, right? Someone comes out and says bacon and butter is really good for you. You got a bestseller on you. And the media loves those kind of stories, right? And so there's just these conflicting. And so the processed food industry, which is $1 trillion industry, they just hope to confuse people so they'll throw up their hands, eat whatever's put in front of them. That's good for business, but not so good for people. Whereas if you look at the science, there's a remarkable global scientific consensus as to the core elements of healthy living going back decades. So, the scientific record isn't confused, just the way it's translated out to the public by these moneyed commercial interests that the message is lost along the way.
Is it a conspiracy by these industries, or are they just looking in their best interest because they're just trying to maximize profits?
That's just the way the symptom works. The CEO of Coca-Cola doesn't say, how do I make kids fat today, right? It's like, no, it's how do I make my shareholders happy in this quarter, right? Short-term profits for shareholders, right? Even if that CEO said, I care about my kids, I'm not going to do this anymore, they'd be kicked out. That's the whole purpose of a corporation, maximize return for their shareholders. How do you do that? Okay, well, you take something with dirt cheap ingredients, right? It's sugar water. In fact, sugar that's subsidized by U.S. taxpayers in the States, right? So it's artificially cheap sugar, and it's what? So it's a few pennies to make, and then you sell for a few bucks a bottle. That's how you make money, right? But something like produce, fruits and vegetables, it's perishable. It goes bad. It rots on the shelf. You bought a Twinkie, it can be on the shelf for a couple weeks. But you can't make money. It's not a branded product. There's no markup. So the healthiest foods, the system is just set up to reward companies selling people junk. And unfortunately, and even in the government level, we're subsidizing the worst foods. We're subsidizing sugar, subsidizing feed crops so we can have dollar menu burgers. Whereas, why aren't we subsidizing fruits and vegetables, right? So unfortunately the system, so that's why we need to take control over our lives, over our family's health, and really kind of take it back. So the information is there, but unfortunately lost in this cloud of commercial influence.
Talk to me about the life of Michael Greger. You are kind of a one-man crusader, going around, constantly speaking on this. You've been doing this for, near 20 years? And you're constantly on the road, even though you told me earlier, I hate traveling. But you're still doing this. You refuse to accept sponsorships. You have the site.org. It's all about free information.
Sure.
What makes this man tick, and why are you doing this?
Right. There's no ads, no commercials, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything, just put it up as a public service. It's kind of a labor of love. And I do it as a tribute to my grandmother, whose own life was saved through evidence-based nutrition. So, when I was a kid growing up, My grandmother, Frances Greger, was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease. She already had so many bypass surgeries, she basically run out of plumbing at some point, nothing more they could do. Right? Confined to a wheelchair, crushing chest pain, her life was over.
How old was she at this point?
Age 65.
65, wow.
Age 65,
Okay.
life was over.
Pretty young.
Then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography called The Man Who Healed America's Heart. And it talks about the death's door people that showed up, like Frances Greger. It talks about her who arrived in a wheelchair. She had angina, claudication. She couldn't walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she was not only out of her wheelchair, she was walking 10 miles a day. She was one of his great early success stories, right? Where it's a live-in program that put people on a plant-based diet, a graded exercise program. She was up walking around, and thanks to a healthy diet, she was given her medical death sentence at age 65. Thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet until age 96 to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went to medicine, and that's why I practice the type of medicine I practice today, lifestyle medicine.
That was it. You saw grandma get better and you were like, wow, how can this happen?
Right. I mean, at the time, I just assumed, well, yeah, you go to your doctor and you get better. I mean, it was just like, oh, yeah, okay. It didn't occur to me how radical that was. And at that time, they didn't even think heart disease was reversible, period. They thought it was just this inexorable, spiral to death. But Pritikin was showing back in the 70s that, no, this disease could be reversed. It's a lifestyle disease. That's what causes it. Change the lifestyle. Now, the hope. So there were populations. Where did Pritikin get this idea from, right? There were populations around the world. For example, in rural Africa, there's a network of missionary hospitals set up through actually UK physicians like Dr. Dennis Burkitt, right, who's one of the most preeminent medical figures of the 20th century, who went down, started this network of missionary hospitals, and they were seeing millions of people, and they did not suffer from heart disease. So they didn't see any heart disease. They didn't see colon cancer. They didn't see breast cancer. They didn't see, whereas, and these were Western trained doctors, not like they didn't know what to look for. I mean, the only people they saw is, if they had some foreigner there and all, this was before they had westernized their diet. Same thing we saw in rural China, for example, where people eating these plant-based diets, and you say rural China, rural Africa, what's the common Venn diagram, very different diets, is that they were plant-based on a day-to-day basis, with meat only eaten on special occasions. So wait a second, how do we know it's the plant-based nature of their diets that was so effective? Because in the Western world, the only folks with such low rates of these chronic diseases are those eating these strictly plant-based diets. And so you can see the same kind of cholesterol, low cholesterol levels and low blood pressures among those eating healthy. And so the hope was, let's take people with heart disease, put them on the same kind of plant-based diet, followed by populations that do not get epidemic heart disease, and hope maybe we can slow the disease down, perhaps even stop it. But instead, something miraculous happened. As soon as people stopped eating artery-clogging diets, their bodies were able to start dissolving some of that plaque away, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along, but were just never given the chance.
So you can actually reverse this stuff.
That's like, I talk about, there's actually a paper in the medical literature talking about the best kept secret in science. What's the best kept secret in medicine? Is that sometimes the body, under the right conditions, can heal itself. If you whack your shin really hard on a coffee table or something, right? You can get all red, hot, painful, swollen, inflamed, but will heal naturally if you just stand back, let your body work its magic, right? Okay, what if you whack your shin in the same place day after day? In fact, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Right? You'd never heal, right? You go to your doctor and be like, oh, my shin hurts. The doctor will be like, no problem, whip out their pad, write your prescription for painkillers. Right? You're still whacking your shin 3 times a day, still really hurts like heck, but it feels so much better. Those pain pills on board. Thank heavens for modern medicine, right? It's like when people take nitroglycerin for crushing chest pain, right? Tremendous relief, but you're not doing anything to treat the underlying cause of the disease. Our body wants to come back to health if we let it, but if we keep re-damaging ourselves 3 times a day, we may never heal. It's like smoking. One of the most amazing things I learned in all my medical training was that within about 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifelong non-smoker.
15 years.
Isn't that amazing?
Your lungs get cleaned out.
Your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually it's almost as if you never started smoking at all. And every morning of our smoking life, that healing process starting to wham, first cigarette of the day. Re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite. When all we had to do all along, the miracle cure, is just stand back, right? Let our bodies, get out of the way. Let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health. Right? The human body is a self-healing machine. Right? Sure, you can choose moderation and hit yourself with a smaller hammer, but why beat yourself up at all?
Talk to me about the parallels you see between tobacco and this whole, crisis we went through in the 50s, 60s, 70s in America, and diet. I mean, are we going to look back at this in 50 years and say was just a similar lack of knowledge when it comes to diet?
Right. So the parallel is not that there was a lack of knowledge, but the knowledge was there, but just no one knew about it, right? And so there were decades of solid science, starting back in the 30s, linking lung cancer and smoking. In fact, actually, the seminal paper that put it all together was this British doctors study, right, with Dahl and Pato. They were the ones that actually finally clinched the deal. And so it was this kind of epidemiological study that proved this, for 1958, there's a paper, Adventist study out of California, showing non-smokers 90% less lung cancer than smokers, all right? But no one knew about it because back then there wasn't this democratization of information. You couldn't go on the internet, right? If the industry could control the doctors, they could control the message. Right? And so the AMA, the American Medical Association, actually went on record saying smoking was good for you. Not neutral, but actually good for you, beneficial for your health. When the Surgeon General came out with a famous report against smoking in 1964, the AMA actually came out opposed, actually refused to endorse the Surgeon General's report. Why? Couldn't have been because they were just handed a $10 million check from the tobacco industry? Maybe.
Did that actually happen?
That actually happened.
Okay.
So we know why the AMA was sucking up to the tobacco industry, but why weren't more individual doctors speaking up? Well, there were a few ahead of their time speaking up against industries killing millions, but why not more? Maybe it's because the majority of physicians themselves smoke. Just like the majority of physicians today continue to eat foods that are contributing to our epidemics of dietary disease. What was the AMA's rallying cry back then? Everything in moderation. They said extensive scientific studies have proven smoking in moderation, oh, that's fine. Right? Sound familiar? Right? Food industry used the same misinformation, twisting the science, right? The same scientists for hire that downplay the risk of secondhand smoke and toxic chemicals are the same hired by the National Confectioners Association to downplay the risk of candy, same hired by the meat industry to downplay the risk of meat. But the best estimates we have is that processed foods, animal foods, contribute to at least 14 million deaths every year. So those of us involved in this evidence-based nutrition revolution, we're talking about 14 million lives in the balance every year.
If I'm supposed to eat a plant-based diet, how come milk and eggs and red meat and chicken taste so good?
Well, look, the food industry, why does candy taste so good? Why does cotton candy taste so good? Well, look, it must be good for me if it tastes so. The industry has found a way, right, to kind of subvert your natural biological drive. So if you go back a few million years, right, we basically evolved in a state of famine, right? During the winter months, right? There's not a lot. This is before agriculture. We couldn't store up grain, right? Yeah. So we evolved, and so that's why we evolved this insatiable taste for sweet, right, and for fatty, right? Because that's where the calories are. The calories, right?
Concentrated calories.
Concentrated calories. And salt, right? There was no salt shakers, right? There was no, potato chips out in the savannah, right? And so we had this desperate need for salt, sugar, fat. And so those are natural biological drives. So back then, our sweet sensation made us eat a lot of blueberries off the bush, right? That was a good thing for our bodies. But now, right? Now we're not in a state of caloric deficiency, right? In fact, in most of the industrialized world, we actually get too many calories. Now, it's a matter of the industry has taken those same drives, turned it against us. Oh, you like sweet? How about some soda pop? Oh, you like salty? How about some chips? How you like, fatty? Well. And so before, it was a survival mechanism. Cracking open bones and scavenging for brains and bone marrow. That got us just to reproductive age to pass along our genes, right? Now, right? In fact, you could have, if you time machine airdrop some Twinkies back then, those the Twinkie Neanderthals would go on and conquer everybody else. It was a calorie deficiency, calories through any means necessary, right? But now, we don't just want to live to reproductive age, right? Now, we live old enough to actually start suffering from chronic diseases. And chronic diseases, well, then, those fatty foods, those salty foods are working against us, but of course, that's what sells. But the good news is, so am I saying what? Oh, so I'm going to eat healthy, nothing's going to taste good? At first, that's true, right? I mean, so the ripest peach in the world will taste sour after a bowl of Fruit Loops. I mean, it'll just, because your taste buds are just overwhelmed, right? You all of a sudden go on a low-salt diet. Your doctor puts you on a low-salt diet. Everything for the first week tastes like cardboard, right? But what you show, I mean, you can do these kind of metabolic ward studies, lock people in a room, actually, very tightly control what people eat. So you have people salt soup to their liking, and you measure how much salt they put in. And then you put them on a low-salt diet, and a few weeks later, they actually prefer less salt. And so you give them the soup that originally tasted the best. Oh, it's too salty. Oh, you don't like it, right? And so your taste buds naturally evolve. In fact, with sugar, it can happen as few as 5 days. You cut out these super sweet foods. Within 5 days, all of a sudden, natural, whole healthy foods taste good. I mean, people see me eat a sweet potato, baked sweet potato with a little cinnamon sprinkled on top, and they're like, oh, I could never live that kind of aesthetic life. But they don't realize, no, that actually tastes good to me. Right. And in 5 days of not eating candy bars, it would actually taste good to them too. I mean, actually, I enjoy it. So you get the best of both worlds. Wait a second. It tastes good and you get to live longer, right? But you got to give it a chance to take back your taste buds from the industry that's trying to kind of supersaturate them.
Okay. Were you always completely plant-based? Or at one point did you ever say, well, maybe some fish protein is okay? Or maybe some game bird protein is okay? Was there any time where you were like, this might work? Or were you...
Oh, well, look, it doesn't matter what you eat on your birthday or holiday, special occasions. It's the day-to-day stuff that really adds up, right? It's just like the whack your shin analogy, right? Your body has this remarkable capacity to heal. It's just when you jab it with a fork 3 times a day, every day, and it just doesn't have the chance to heal, right? I mean, there's no science in the world that you can show me that suggests that social smokers, these people, there are some people, they can pick up a few cigarettes at a party a year, right? And they never get hooked, they never, right? No one's going to tell me that a few cigarettes a year is going to have any, measurable increase in lung cancer risk, right, over a lifetime. But the reason a doctor says no smoking at all is they're afraid that one cigarette's going to turn to 2, then it's going to turn to a pack-a-day habit. So we just tell people no smoking at all. But that's out of a recognition that it's not the one cigarette that's going to do it, right? And so the same thing, right? I mean, but on a day-to-day basis, we really should try to eat healthier. Now, I didn't grow up, so here I was as a kid, seeing this remarkable transformation from my grandmother.
Where'd you grow up?
So born in Miami.
Okay.
Then grew up out west, moved around.
Okay. It's like a little southern accent sometimes from you.
Oh, really? No, well, I don't know. So my mom was Brooklyn, Dad was Queens, and so if anything, maybe I got a little, I don't know. In fact, I just spoke in Brooklyn. It was so nice to go back, and I showed pictures of my mom. She was part of Brooklyn Core, the Congress on Racial Equality, and all these pictures of her getting dragged away and arrested during the Civil Rights Movement. It was a wonderful.
It's in the family.
It's in the family. No, right? We are just kind of mission-driven folks, I guess. I mean, we just see an injustice, right? And we want to make it better.
Okay. And so you said you grew up not having this diet.
Oh, yeah, no. So, I mean, for me, it was like, oh, yeah, grandma has to eat that way because she's sick. Yeah. It's a treatment for sickness. I'm young and healthy. I don't need a treatment for sick, right? It was just, and not realizing. So it really wasn't until 90 when Ornish's paper came out showing the way you can reverse heart disease, which in the States is the #1 killer of men and women. Here in the UK, it's the #2 killer of cancer. But so the #1 killer of men and women can be reversed. I was like, all right, that's it. I mean, my family had seen it with their own eyes, but here it was, published in black and white, some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. Like, the evidence at that point was just overwhelming that I couldn't ignore it. And so then started myself eating that way. And with the recognition, I should have been eating this way all along. But it just didn't kind of click that, Yeah, duh. I mean, if that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one or two killer of men and women, shouldn't that kind of be the default diet to proven otherwise? And the fact that it can also prevent, arrest, and reverse other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming.
What'd you eat today?
Oh my God. I actually ate really good. So on the road, it's not so easy. I find myself in an airport food court and, there's not much to eat. So,
Because there's animal proteins everywhere.
I mean, it's just
salted, processed.
but no. In the hotel that we stayed in by Heathrow here had a vegetarian breakfast thing, and breakfast in the UK is what I tell everyone to eat: beans for breakfast. So I had beans and tomatoes and mushrooms, kind of the traditional kind of British breakfast, just without the sausage, without the processed meat. But in fact, I tell everyone, so I encourage people to eat legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils 3 times a day. And so I say, beans for breakfast, eat like the Brits. So you hear me, I say, eat like the Brits, beans for breakfast. But that's not, in Japan they have miso soup and they have idli in India. I mean, having legumes for breakfast is not so crazy. But in the U.S., like beans for breakfast, what are you talking about? But so here I can finally follow my own advice and eat like a Brit.
Okay.
So a great breakfast, and then at lunch. So I come here for the interview, and just pull out my phone and look for restaurants within the 1 mile radius while I'm waiting around, and poof, 2 places show up. One, this restaurant called Redemption, whole food, plant-based. In fact, there's a sign out front that says, sugar-free, plant-based. It goes on it, free. So what do we serve? Question mark. What's in this?
Is that what it
It's
said?
just like water. Yeah, water? But no, of course. It's just, so I had this amazing dish with purple sweet potatoes and mushrooms and greens and this yellow cauliflower and black sesame seeds and a peanut sauce. It was absolutely fantastic. And so it checked off all my boxes. I have this free app, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, where I, on Android and iPhone, everything of course is free, where it includes how many servings of all the foods I encourage people to get into their daily diet. So beans every day, berries every day, the healthiest foods, greens every day, the healthiest vegetables, tablespoon of ground flax seeds, quarter teaspoon of turmeric, the best beverages, best sweetener, how much exercise, blah, blah, blah. And you can tick off the boxes and chart your daily project, whatever. So here I am. I could have ticked off half my boxes for the day in one lunch. And then, how about this? For dessert, there's this place called Nana Bar, right? Where it is a nice cream bar. So it's a ice cream made from frozen bananas. One ingredient, frozen bananas, put through some juice or food processor or something, comes out like soft serve ice cream. And then they just have whole food, toppings. And the guy behind the counter, his mom made the granola. How cool is that? Okay, so I'm having his mom's granola on frozen banana ice cream. So whole plant-based dessert and meal, and totally random. I didn't have to do my homework. I just showed up, and where was I going to eat? Now this doesn't happen everywhere. Sometimes I'm in Arkansas or something, and I'm living off of Taco Bell bean burritos or something. But when I'm blessed to be in a great metropolitan city like London, I can eat healthy.
You can make it happen.
Easy. I mean, I didn't even, without a second thought.
Yeah. Now, you say that you're in a plant-based diet, but you don't use the V word, the vegan word. Is there a reason not to do that?
Yeah.
And also because, I've had vegans on here and I love it, but also they have a specific culture that's also a lot of times quite combative when it comes to meat eaters and things like that. And there's the old joke, how do you know, well, when you met a vegan, give them a few minutes and they'll tell you. And so are you trying to kind of disassociate from that, or what's your read on the whole thing?
Oh, well, I mean, so as a physician, the words vegetarian, vegan, they don't tell me what you eat. I mean, it tells me what you don't eat, right? But there's lots of really garbage vegetarian food. You could live off of chips and soda, and I go speak at these college campuses. They live off of chips and beer, basically, right? These college vegans that don't care about their health, but they're doing it for global warming reasons or whatever. And you can eat a miserable diet, right? Whereas whole food, plant-based, that tells me actually what you do eat. Oh, you actually eat your vegetables. Aha, now we can, right? And so unfortunately, it's just not as informative. Plus, there is this kind of baggage that comes along with it. Whereas, for your health, it doesn't matter whether you have a leather belt on or not, right? I mean, they have other things that come along with it. it's like an identity, as opposed to like, so if you're going to talk about vegan, I would prefer talking about vegan eating or a vegan meal, as opposed to vegan, the noun identity, because that sets up this kind of barrier. Like, well, I don't want to be a vegan necessarily, but oh yeah, I want to see my kids grow up and I want to be healthy. And oh, okay, so the more and more, whole plant foods one can center their diets around, right, the better. And so it's a spectrum, right? So the largest study of plant-based eaters in the world actually used to be here in the UK until Aventis 2 took over this massive study in the States, particularly California and Canada. So following tens of thousands of people eating plant-based diets, and shows this kind of so they compared non-vegetarians to so-called semi-vegetarians or flexitarians, people eating meat more like a once-a-week basis rather than a daily basis, compared to pescatarians, those who eat no meat except fish, compared to ovo-lacto-vegetarians who eat no meat at all, compared to vegans who eat no meat, eggs, or dairy, and shows this kind of stepwise drop. Where each level is significantly lower disease risk for type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure and obesity, such that even lacto-ovo-vegetarians, at least in the States, are on average overweight. Their BMI is actually over 25. The only dietary group actually fitting ideal weight with those eating more strictly plant-based diets. So it's not black and white. It's not all or nothing. Any movement we can make along this spectrum towards eating healthy can accrue significant benefits. I think that's an important message to get.
Okay, you're a scientist, you're a doctor, so that makes sense. You're like, what you put in your mouth that's going to make you live longer and healthier, as opposed to what belt you wear, as opposed to what you... So you care about the facts and the science. Okay.
Right.
I went on a low-salt diet. Actually, I was doing an ayahuasca ceremony, so I had to not eat a lot of foods, and I found that once I came back on it, I didn't really want the salt. And I didn't really want some of those foods. And the other thing that's happened to me with me lately is I've been doing a lot of body weight exercises, less of the lifting weights, and I found that I'm trending toward more of a vegetable-based diet. And also I'm listening to my gut a little bit more. Like if it hurts a little when I first eat it, why do I keep eating it? I don't know. Are these just other symptoms? Do you think about this stuff, or do you go back to the science?
No, there's really nice feedback loops. I mean, it is all the science. I mean, that's why I encourage people to give it a try. Right, try it as like a free sample. Right, anyone can eat anything for a few weeks. Right, in fact, you can eat nothing for a few weeks. I mean, so look, it's just, and so the thought of wait a second, I can't eat pepperoni pizza for the rest of my life, like that's just mind blowing. People can't even consider that, and of course that's not what I'm saying. But on a day-to-day basis, we want to eat healthy. But I said no, give me 3 weeks. Right, so 3 weeks, let's eat healthy, and I'll give you all these tips, and in fact, there's this great 21-day Kickstart program run by an organization, a nonprofit called Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Starts at the first of every month. Hundreds of thousands of people done through it. It's a bunch of different languages. You sign up. It's all completely free. You do it as kind of a social media group. You all sign up together, and you share recipes, and you get daily tips and stuff. And first of every month, 21-day Kickstart. So I think it's 21daykickstart.org, something like that. So again, just giving people the hows to actually do it. Oh, but again, just 21. Just give it 20. And the thought is, look, 21 days, all of a sudden your taste buds are changing, the food is tasting better, and you're feeling better. Right? And so all of a sudden, oh, your sleep is better. People are like, oh, you doing? Oh, I'm fine. I'm young, healthy, have no symptoms. And then they thought they didn't have symptoms. They're like, oh, my chronic indigestion went away. Like, I just thought that was normal to just always feel bloated and gross after a meal. Like, that's just, but no, now, so my, bowel regulated, my periods are less painful. I mean, just like, they just feel so much better. And so then they have this internal motivation. No longer is it like, oh, yeah, a few decades down the road, you're not going to have a stroke or something. But it's this internal, wow, I feel so much better. In fact, it's funny, when they do these studies, talk about science, often they do what's called an ABA design, where you put people, switch people to a diet, so you have before and after, and then you switch them back to make sure it was actually the diet. So you switch people from their regular diet to a special diet, and then you see changes. And then you want to say, wait a second, was that just coincidence that happened? So you switch them back to their original diet to see if indeed everything went back to normal. And so there's been these studies done where they switch people to a plant-based diet, right? So it's been done for like migraines and a bunch of different medical conditions, rheumatoid arthritis. So switch people for a couple weeks, and then part of the study protocol, they have to go back to the original diet, because then your joints feel better. We want to make sure your joints actually feel worse. And they refuse to do it. And so many study subjects refuse to go back to their original diet. It screws up the study. In fact, we have to throw out those people from the study because they violated the protocol. And so actually the science comes out and actually underestimates the effect, right? It's so powerful we can't even show it because they won't even finish the darn study. because they just feel so much better. They're like, well, I'm not going back. Wait, I feel so much better. Wait, you crazy? You couldn't pay me to go back to the original diet. And so but you don't know until you give it a try, right? You don't know how good you can feel till you give it a try. And then you have the internal motive. Like, I feel better. Like, I don't care. So, and then all the science in the world, so like, well, I know how my body feels, and I feel better eating this way. And yeah, it's great that science shows it's going to reduce my risk of all this other stuff. But again, you don't know till you give it a try. So that's really what I encourage my patients to do.
I'm American, and growing up in America, I'm just wondering how we break this cycle of eating. I still remember, how big is your steak? All these foods that almost seem like an American right. To have my fries, and to have my deep fried this, and to have my this, and to have my that. And, I watched this movie, Cowspiracy. I know you were in the sequel to that movie. And, when they asked him, they said, well, wait a second, you want me to reduce my shower volume of the water to save water? And they said, but what about not eating meat to save water? And everyone's like, well, we can't ask people to change their diet, or they'll revolt. And because it's such a personal thing
really
to ask
is.
maybe an American to, or maybe anybody. But how do we change this cycle? And then on top of that, when my heart gets diseased, I go to my doctor. He writes a prescription for a statin that he basically, is promoted to do. It funds the medical industry. They put out a beautiful 90-second ad on TV about how it's going to make me happy. I mean, there's a crazy, vicious cycle going on here. How do we break that?
I mean, it's a very personal thing. I mean, talking about diet, it's like talking about religion, talking about politics. I mean, it's really deeply personal. It's like, basically, I'm saying, wait a second, you're telling me what my mother fed me was bad for me? Hey, don't get, let's not go.
Don't talk about my mother.
Don't talk about my mother. What were you? What? Right. So oftentimes, so what I've done in my own practice is I start out not taking anything away. I just encourage to eat more healthy food. So I'm not taking anything away. It's like, okay, I want you to eat this every day, have a salad every day, and add these foods to your diet. I want you to eat this much fruit every day, and then they feel, they're not feeling deprived. Now they got too much food, in hopes that you're kind of, there's only so much you can fit. There's only so many calories you can get in a day, and so you're hoping by eating some of the healthiest foods, inspiring people to some of they just don't have enough room for some of the less healthy options at the end of the day, and so they can kind of start down that path. Okay. And then they start feeling healthier, and they start getting a taste for these foods. They start experimenting with new foods. People have the sense that, like, what am I going to eat? It's like it would constrict my diet. Whereas many people, actually, if you ask them, people tend to only eat 8 or 9 meals. On surveys, the average, people only tend to eat about 8 or 9 dinner meals. They just kind of rotate through. Really kind of a boring, restricted kind of reservoir of meat. And when actually you discover that there's this whole ocean of other possibilities out there, all sorts of neat ethnic cuisines, foods you've never tried, that, you might actually like more than just the standard kind of, regular, I don't know, just different, flavors preparing. A lot of people, grew up, never knew what hummus was, or it's like, wow, this stuff is really good. And, and so it often ends up expanding people's repertoire. They're actually eating more interesting, more diverse diets than they ever were before, eating just kind of the standard American diet or the standard British Western diet.
So you try to encourage them to try some new foods and see.
Right. And do it at whatever pace is necessary to stick with it. It doesn't matter what you eat today or tomorrow or next week. It's what you're going to be eating 10 years from now, right? Yeah. And so go at whatever pace. It has to be affordable. It has to be delicious. It has to be convenient for you and your life, right? I mean, anyone can hold their nose and eat something they don't like for a couple days or a couple weeks, right? But then it's not going to be lifelong sustained, right? This is a lifestyle. It's a whole different way for you. So for the rest of your life, can you eat this way? If the answer is no, you've got to keep trying foods. And then all of a sudden you find a breakfast, you're like, I never had steel-cut oats before. Wow, these are really good with berries and nuts. And wow, okay, I could see myself eating this way, this variety of really good food. Okay, so then you got you ticked off a box for, I've got a really good go-to breakfast. Okay, and then you're like, what are some lunch options that fit into my workplace or whatever? And look, if this takes weeks, if this takes months, we're talking about, your longevity. We're talking about adding years to your life. We're talking about adding healthy years to your life so you actually be productive to society, enjoy life, right? Healthy people have more fun. That's the message I want to give. Healthy people have more fun, right? For people, particularly young people, a lot of people, they may not have a close relative that's actually been really sick or actually seen somebody die. But see, we physicians, we're in the hospitals, right? We see how horrible diseases, right? I mean, I take all my diabetics to a dialysis ward. Unless you've been to a dialysis ward, you don't know what it's like to lose your kidney function.
What's it look like?
Oh, I mean, so first of all, there's this stench of urine. You just can't get away from it, because basically that's what you're doing. You're filtering out the urine because they no longer had kidney function.
Right.
And so people have to go there, and it's literally hours hooked up to this machine that cycles throughout their blood, and it's the most depressed, soul-crushing. In fact, the turnover at this place in terms of the employees, the staff, is so great just because it's just because everybody dies so quickly. In fact, the average life expectancy once you start dialysis is very short. Though most diabetics actually don't make it to dialysis because they die of heart disease first, because dialysis so increases your risk of heart disease. You have a heart attack before your kidneys function, but if kidney fail. But people don't realize, like, the loss of independence. Like, hospitals are horrible places to be. If you've never experienced that yourself, you just don't realize that whatever dreams you have, whatever you want to do with your life, you don't realize how cut short that would be by a disability. That all of a sudden, like, if you couldn't see, like, what would that mean for your life and your family? And, like, and so, yeah, the vegans talk about global warming and animal welfare and all these kind of other external kind of altruistic whatever. But no, I'm talking tangible benefits. Your life, what do you want to do? Like, what are your goals? And, how are you going to get there? And how can I? Look, it's your body, your choice. You want to smoke cigarettes? Want to go bungee jumping? It's your body, your choice. Do whatever you want. As a physician, all I can do is share with you what the predictable consequences of your actions are. If you continue to smoke, this is what's likely to happen to people in your circumstance, And so that's all I can do is share that information. Then what people do with it, it's completely up to them. As far as I'm concerned, look, as soon as everybody knows the truth, I'm retiring. That's it, right? Let other people have cooking shows, tell people how to do it, make it convenient, make it fun, that's fine. As long as people know, get to make that choice, an informed consent. Say, yeah, I know smoking's not good for me, but I'm going to continue to do it. Okay, right? Look, it's your body. I'm not going to do it, but, right? As long as people know the power they have over their health and longevity through what is at the end of their fork. As long as people know that, then my job is done. And I'm at the beach with my, little kale cocktail, kicking back.
But your job is never ending, and you are out there preaching this stuff. But the numbers are telling us that it's still going the other way in America. And so is there going to be this, I still worry, and I'm sure you do, that there's going to be this crisis moment. And what is it when medical care becomes 25% of GDP? What is it when everyone just literally starts dying in front of our eyes? When is the message really going to get through? Because, you're doing amazing work, but it's going in one ear out the other.
Yeah, so last year was the first year, kind of a record, where the life expectancy actually declined in the U.S. for the first time, basically, since our nation's founding. Once we got out of the British yoke. That was, ever since then.
It's just business.
So life, expects to be going on, generally, but then for the first time, right? So we're looking at the first generation of children in the United States living shorter lives than their parents. And why? It's because of obesity, diabetes. And so there is work to be done, right? But it's like, how many more calories? It's like, why is there an obesity epidemic? Oh, look how much calories are people eating now compared to the 70s, and it literally tracks one, like, whoa, yeah, this is how much weight you put on eating this many more calories a day. This is how much weight people put on. There's no mystery. People are eating more. For why? Because the junk food industry is getting people to eat garbage all day, and they're making off like bandits, but leaving this healthcare bill not for the government, for all society, and this tremendous human cost. But look, so I'm hoping people will be able to take back their health. Just like this, in smoking, the peak year of smoking. So it used to be back in the 50s, the average per capita cigarette consumption in the States, 4,000 cigarettes a year. Average. So that means the average person walking around smoked half pack a day, on average, right?
That's crazy.
Okay.
Like, this is why in Mad Men they're always smoking all the time.
Yeah, media was telling people to smoke, the government, the medical profession, right? So on one hand, you had all the medical profession, the government, media telling you to smoke. On the other, all you had the science. If you were even aware of that body of research, and many people weren't. So that peaked 1964, then basically went down every year since in terms of smoking. And you like, wait a second, what happened in 1964? The Surgeon General's report against smoking came out. Now, at that point, it took 7 7,000 studies. So the Surgeon General's report in 1964 referenced 7,000 studies linking smoking with the disease. You'd think after the first 6,000 it could give people a little heads up or something. No, 7,000 studies, right? That's what it took before the powers that be officially recognized it. Again, we had evidence going back to the 30s, right? That smoking wasn't good for you, but again, it wasn't until the powers that be actually came out and said it. So I believe we're in a similar situation today, where having very similar bombarded with messages. The science is clear, yet the message we get about what we eat. So how long is it going to take before we get the next kind of Surgeon General's report about diet? So when I was speaking...
20 years?
Well, so I was speaking last year before the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, their chronic disease unit, and that was actually the first question I got, was, okay, what do you want us to do about it? All right, about, the power of diet. No one questions the science. Like if I go around, so if you go around and talk about Dean Ornish's work, for example, I go to these big medical conferences. No one says, oh, that's. No one can say that. It is. These are randomized controlled trials published in the best journals. What they say is, oh, my patients won't do it, right? They have this patronizing attitude. I can't even get my patients to stop smoke. I'm not even going to bring this up, right? They're making their mind up for the patients, right? Rather than giving, patients the right to decide for themselves. Anyway, but the science isn't in contest, but just this sense of, people might not do it. And so when CDC, I said, look, in 1964, so you just have to, just to acknowledge the fact. So, for example, last year, the World Health Organization, the IARC, the official body that determines what is and is not cancer-causing, bumped up processed meat to a Category 1 carcinogen. So that's bacon, ham, hot dogs, sausages, lunch meat, right? So a category, meaning we are as certain processed meat causes cancer in human beings than we are that plutonium causes cancer in cigarette smoke and asbestos, right? It is a proven human carcinogen, right? Yet we send our kids to school with it. It's like, school lunch trays get like a carton of milk, carton of cigarettes. That's the equivalent of what we're doing. And so why isn't it on the CDC website? The World Health Organization says processed meat is a Category 1 carcinogen, right? Processed meat causes cancer. If there's just this public acknowledgement of the settled science, that's all, again. And then people can do whatever they want. I'm not saying ban the stuff, right? You want to smoke, smoke. You want to eat meat. But recognize, as long as you have an understanding of what this might be doing to your family.
How powerful these industries? Milk, dairy, meat,
so,
processed food.
There's one of my favorite examples of the power. There's lots of. So I was involved in the Oprah Winfrey case, the meat defamation trial. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah,
so
bring us up to speed. What happened?
This rancher, named Howard Lyman, was on the Oprah Winfrey show.
In the 90s.
Oh yeah, way back.
Okay.
During the mad cow scare here, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, right? And it really didn't. It was surprising, back then. It was of course all the fury here. Understandably so, given the uncertainties, but it never really made it across the Atlantic. Like people, it wasn't kind of in the public consciousness over there that people were dealing with this problem over here in Europe.
Right, and just break down mad cow disease real quick for people.
So here in Britain, I got to talk about. Bovine sponge. So this prion, this disease that arose from the practice of feeding animal protein to cattle. So feeding cows to cows, sheep to sheep, goats to goats. And so this kind of protein recycling enabled this brain pathogen to be spread through the food chain. Now, normally cows would be herbivores. They'd never eat the brains of they'd never be cannibals, right? But we kind of made them into and that spread this disease that otherwise couldn't spread. In fact, the only equivalent was this cannibal disease called Kuru in Papua New Guinea, where there actually was the same spongiform encephalopathy because they ate the brains and they're dead.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't eat the brains, you're dead, you're fine. But, in Great Britain, they said, I got this great money saving. Why feed them corn and soybeans? That costs money. Let's feed them brains. Let's feed them, slaughterhouse byproducts, meat and dairy.
And then they thought this disease might actually transfer to humans.
And then the concern was, what if it transfers to humans? And so.
And they had horrible graphic images of these cows on Mad Cow, and they were
we're talking basically an entire generation here in Britain exposed to this meat. Right, because we didn't know about it. And so the question is, and it has a long incubation period. So how many people are incubating this disease? And thankfully, humanity dodged a bullet. and that it was actually extremely unlikely. That it was very rare. There's been a few cases, very rare, that transmission, that zoonotic animal-to-human transmission. Okay, but at the time we didn't know that, and so Howard Lyman said, we feed cows to cows in the States as well. And it was such a shocking. Not only have we made cows,
said that on the Oprah show.
Said that on the Oprah show, and Oprah said, "That's it. I'm never eating another burger again." Right?
By the way, Oprah was the internet back in the 90s.
She was.
Right? She really was.
Right. So probably the most popular, right? This billionaire, right? So it's very powerful, and that's important for the story. And so she said, "Never going to eat a burger again." Okay. So cattle futures on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange tumbled that week, right? And this Texas cattle rancher lost a lot of money and sued Oprah under what are called food libel laws or food disparagement laws, where you cannot make unfounded comments against perishable food items, right? And so my role in the defense was arguing that no, these were indeed founded comments, that there actually was, this was a risky practice to kind of recycle cattle protein in cattle feed. And so what people remember is, oh yeah, didn't Oprah win? What's the big deal? Okay, well the big deal is no, yes, Oprah did win. After 8 years of appeals, back and forth, and ruined her life. She had to move the show to Texas because she had to have cattle, right?
Because Chicago's
and
important.
Cost millions of dollars. And so technically she won, but in terms of the silencing effect, if the meat industry can take on one of the most powerful people in the world, drag her through the courts, you've got no chance. And so it had this silencing effect on what other media outlet is going to raise their. Same thing happened with the pink slime debate. The ABC News, and so in the States there's this pink slime, a type of meat that they were that was dubbed by USDA scientists as pink slime, which was getting into hamburgers, and they called it pink slime, and they were sued. Because you can't call it pink slime, it's derogatory to our business, costs a lot of money. Anyway, they won the lawsuit against ABC News. Again, the silencing effect, no one's going to bring this up. And so the industry really, in the grand scheme of things, industry really won in terms of its messaging that you take on us, we will destroy you.
And do they control politicians through funding campaigns?
So in the Beltway, where I live in Washington, D.C., the two most powerful industries, the pharmaceutical industry and animal agriculture, and they in fact work both together. It's the pharmaceutical industry that sells the antibiotics that are used as feed additives, illegal here, but still practiced in the U.S. And so no wonder that even though all public health and human medical authorities have come out against such a risky practice, continues. And I think a good example of the kind of political might of the meat industry was, this was recently, a few years ago, in an internal USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, internal employee newsletter that just goes out and wasn't for public consumption, had suggested as one little blurb in the newsletter, try Meatless Mondays. And it was under some environmental, it saves this much carbon and this much water. 1 day a week, try eating some meatless meals. Have a bean burrito instead of a beef burrito. Okay, that was the extent, right? And it created such a political firestorm that it was down off the internet within hours. Nothing happens in D.C. within hours. That happened in D.C. within hours. They had, the Dakota senator talking, slamming the USDA for daring to suggest that people, and it wasn't even a public message, but that shows how politically sensitive that kind of message is. And so the whole mission of the U.S. Department of Agriculture is to promote agricultural products. Right? At the same time, they're the ones we put in charge of food safety and coming up with the dietary guidelines. Right? So that's a very similar reason why MAFF here was disbanded, right? Because this conflict of interest within agriculture, right? It continues in the states. And so when it comes for the dietary guidelines, when it comes to eat more messaging, well then their mission is fine. They want to promote agricultural products and we want to protect public health. So when it comes to eat more fruits and vegetables, they're very clear. You look at the USDA, dietary recommendations, eat more fruits and vegetables. All right, okay, but eat less messaging, then there's a conflict. right? They want to protect public health, but all of a sudden, well, okay. So then what do? Then they coach it in kind of biochemical lingo. So they eat more fruits and vegetables and then cut down on saturated and trans fatty acids. What does that mean? Cut down on meat, dairy, junk food, right? But they can't say that.
Okay.
Drink less soda. They can't say that, right? But they can. But it just gives you a sense of the kind of tiptoeing around these powerful industries we have to do. And if there weren't millions of lives in the balance, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the fact that these are literally life and death decisions that we're dealing with makes it all the more important to get the truth out, and that's why I'm a man on a mission.
Okay, well, we're speaking on that. Talk to me about the pharmaceutical industry, because let alone supplying some of the antibiotics for the animals, they are the ones that kind of enjoy the back end of this diet, those statins. And I remember talking to my dad about 10 years ago, and I've been in Britain for 5 or 6 years, and I'm on all these cholesterol drugs, and on this cholesterol, and I'm like, what do you do? I don't know anybody in London on cholesterol drugs, and it was just like there was this massive overprescription of things in the States. I mean, it's a huge industry, but of course that kind of feeds on these unhealthy diet choices. So, what do you see there? And then do you ever see us breaking through that? Because that could arguably be a more powerful lobby.
Yeah, so the most profitable industry in the States is the pharmaceutical industry. And the best-selling drugs in human history, number one, Lipitor. So it's this multi-billion-dollar drug. It's a cholesterol-lowering statin drug, right? So if you look at all the top-selling drugs, right, they're not the drugs that have the most, like antibiotics. The problem with antibiotics, save lives and stuff. You take them for 10 days. What? You can't make money. But take a drug for every day for the rest of your life, cholesterol-lowering drug, a chronic disease lifestyle drug. If you're going to eat the same crap, you're going to have to take this blood pressure medication every day for the rest of your life. This cholesterol-lowering drug every day for the rest of your life. Now that's a moneymaker, right? And then that's something. Okay, so that's where, and so diabetes drugs. Right. So this is where the money is. This is where the profits is for the shareholders. Again, it's not they're not sitting around trying to think how we can make people sick or how we can, not help people. It's just this is the.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just when they're profit driven, it happens.
This is the system that we live in.
Okay.
Particularly in the States where we have this profit driven healthcare, and even for the doctors, right? The most common doctor visit in the States and actually throughout North America, in Canada as well, is what's called a blood pressure check, where you're on blood pressure medications. We want people to come in every few months, make sure we don't need to tweak. Blood pressure is even higher. We need to increase your dose, add on a second or third or fourth drug. Okay, it's the easiest doctor visit in the world. You come in, you get your blood pressure checked, you tweak, you're all right. I do it in 5 minutes, right? So that is the most common.
And you sell a few $100s more of drugs.
And so it makes so for someone to say, no, you change your diet. And you can get off these blood pressure medications, right? You can have normal blood pressure on no blood pressure medications. And so that's the cash cow, not only for the pharmaceutical industry, but also for the medical industry as well. The system runs off of chronic disease. That's how hospitals make their money. That's how everybody makes their money. And so there's just no incentive, right? The system isn't set up. In fact, it's funny, when there was just a few months ago in Bloomberg, it was like a business news outlet in the States, came out with it saying how many billions of dollars corporations are going to save because life expectancy is dropping for the first time in the States because they don't have to pay pensioners, right? They're going to save so much money because people are dying so much earlier. They are going to save billions of dollars. So, like Lockheed Martin, one company was going to save over $1 billion because their retirees were going to die earlier than because they had all these obligations for their workers, right? So talk about perverse financial incentives. So basically, right, companies want to keep people healthy and productive until 64, right, and then quickly drop that, right? It's just the system is not set up.
Okay. Now, but as a doctor, if I prescribe you Lipitor and you come in on a regular basis, I don't actually make more money on that, do I? So why would I continue doing it?
First of all, our education. We are basically a pharma-educated. Medical school is basically funded by big pharma infusion, like continuing medical education. All doctors need to get a certain number of hours to kind of keep up with registration. Who provides that for free? In fact, they throw in meals and fancy dinners. Of course, it's the drug industry, and they'll sell you that this is their drug, and they're happy to. Right?
And they fund a lot of the studies.
So they fund the studies. They fund. They
that you have to be relevant.
Vacations. The system is set up.
The public would not know what you're talking about. They would be like, "What are you talking about? It's one of the most treasured institutions. Right. It's like heaven going to medical school, and it's all pure." Right. But when you talk about this, most people would be like, "What? The pharmaceutical industry is involved there?"
From day one in medical education, postgraduate medical education, and then as physicians continuing professional medical education, they have their fingers in the pie all along the way, and you can see these big shifts. And as soon as a drug goes off patent, and all of a sudden they switch it, and instead of Prilosec, try our other. Now the Prilosec is off patent. We're going to change you to the other purple pill, right?
Because the margin's there.
Because all of a sudden the margin's there, and so there's this massive push. And so in the States, it's thousands of dollars per physician. That's what in terms of their outreach. So there's thousands of dollars for every physician in terms of changing their prescription habits. And doctors will say, "Oh yeah, all the freebies that I get and all the meals I'm taking, doesn't affect my decisions." But then one would have to think, "Oh, the drug industry just likes wasting money for nothing, right? They're just so sweet and they just love giving gifts for nothing." No, presumably they know that they're going to shift prescription habits. And it's very rare these days where, used to be, you got a certain number of prescriptions of a certain expensive drug, you'd get a vacation, literally. There was this really explicit quid pro quo. Now it's much more subtle. So a lot of those excesses have been removed. In fact, now there's a transparency, the Open Payments Act, which was passed, and now drug companies have to tell how much money they gave to each doctor. So you can look, in the States, you can look up your doctor and see how much money they got from which drug company.
In dinners and expenses
in
and all
everything.
Okay.
Right. And it's shocking to see how much doctors are on the take. And it's unfortunate because presumably you went into medicine because you want to help people, you want to take care of sick people. Look, if you want to make money, you go to the stock market or something, right? Presumably people going into medicine have this kind of humanistic urge, but unfortunately this somehow translates. Maybe medical training just kind of beats it out of you, and you come out kind of demanding reparations for your tough time that you had.
And the money you spent.
But you go in with this idealistic, you want to open up a homeless clinic or something, but then on the other side you're getting that next BMW, and it's a sad transformation.
And you're back to just doing Lipitor prescriptions.
And you're back to, look, it's the easiest thing in the world.
Right.
And it's quick. And
your patients come in saying, "I saw this three-minute ad where everyone looks so happy. Can you give me this drug?"
Right, and 4-hour erection? That doesn't sound bad to me, right? Okay, so, and look, I can see 6 patients an hour if I'm just writing prescriptions, right? A lot of docs have capitated payments where they're paid by the number of patients they can see. They get more money if they see more patients. How do you see more patients? It's the quickest thing in the world to write a script for somebody, right? Okay, but having a conversation about someone's life, what they're eating, what kind of social situation they're in. That's that, and they're not getting reimbursed. You don't get paid. There's no Medicare box you can check off and get paid, get reimbursed for educating people about healthy eating. Even though that may be one of the most powerful interventions, it's not paid for. It's not reimbursed. So the system is set up to reward pills and procedures, but that's not getting at the underlying cause.
You got a lot of industries that are looking out for you. The meat industry, the dairy industry, the egg industry, the pharmaceutical industry. How are you still walking around?
Why am I not?
Should I be worried for my safety now?
Right, so when I found a ditch somewhere, you'll know it wasn't right.
It wasn't that soybean you ate.
Right. The more pushback I get, then the more I know I'm making a difference, right? If I'm being ignored, then I don't feel I'm having an impact. And so the more kind of attacks I get, the better. But
what you get.
But I do. But I don't get it from the medical community. So when I stand up and give grand rounds at a hospital, people are desperate for this information. It really kind of, I think, reignites that spark, that idealistic spark while I went to medicine in the first place. Treating chronic disease in primary care is just a soul draining. It's just your patients don't get better. mean, the only happy docs are like obstetricians, get to give birth to baby. You know, it's like new baby. Everybody else is miserable, right? It's because, well, maybe the emergency care physicians, they can patch people up, right? But in primary care, GPs, right? People don't get better. They get worse, worse, worse. And you're trying to slow down. You'll have more medication. You add an extra medication to counteract the side effects of the last medication you get, and you just try to, keep people afloat and slow down the rate at which they lose their function and die. Whereas all of a sudden there's a tool. Wait a second, I've got something. Actually, make your patients get better. In fact, when I go to these conferences, in fact, there's a conference going on right now, the International Plant-Based Healthcare Nutrition Conference. Plant-based nutrition healthcare conference right in California. I'd be there if I wasn't here. And there's thousands of plant-based practitioners practicing, come together every year. And when I talk to them, like, how did you come to this, right? I mean, where did you learn that? You obviously weren't taught this in medical school, right? So why are you practicing this way? Very often, it's a patient that taught them. So a patient saw some documentary like Forks Over Knives or What the Health or whatever, or read a book, and then they changed their own diet unbeknownst to their practitioner, right? All of a sudden, and then go back to their, and all of a sudden they lost all this weight and their blood pressure's down, their cholesterol is better. And the doctor's like, what did you do? I've been following you and your family for years, and it's just been kind of, and they say, oh, I got this, here, let me show you this book, or, and they share this, and they're like, oh my, wait a second, I've got 100 patients just like you. 100 patients with diabetes. That's not getting any better. Wait a second. And then all of a sudden they're like, I can actually help people. There's this tool that I wasn't given. And so so it's often the patient educating the doctor. And so that's so frustrating for me, because I go to these doctors like, wait a second. I got a mountain of evidence this high. I've been churning out videos every day, right? Showing that the peer-reviewed scientific medical, hundreds, thousands of studies. Oh, but one little anecdote. One person comes to your office. But we're like storied creatures. Like, that's just like how we interact with the world, is that through, personal interactions. And somehow the science just doesn't, I don't know, is not quite as concrete as one person that they've known face to face, and all of a sudden they're feeling better. It's that human interest story that really can change their whole lives, and they start new practices and all of a sudden helping other people. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, God, we've known for decades. I've been showing you the science. They're like, yeah, but did you see? Look great they look. Ugh.
Yeah, and that's why some of these documentary films are so powerful, because they weave in a personal narrative, and whether it's King Corn and these kinds of things that show these, is very powerful. So yeah, that's true. Some of your critics say you overemphasize the benefits of plant-based diet, and some say that the research isn't there. There's not a randomized, there's no test studies randomized based on plant-based diets. What do you say?
But there are. So, I mean, that's why Lifestyle Heart Trial was so important. It was Ornish. And so Pritikin, for example, was, curing heart disease by the thousands, but wasn't publishing very little, wasn't doing randomized studies. And in fact, this goes back to Kempner back at Duke in the 40s, was doing these amazing studies and refused to randomize patients because basically he was randomizing them to their death. So basically he was putting people on a very strict plant-based diet to cure malignant hypertension. We didn't have high blood pressure medications. People's blood pressures got way high, and then they died. They had these horrible strokes, and literally had a few months to live. And he wouldn't and he was curing them with his rice diet, which is his plant-based diet. And so to randomize people to a control group was to randomize people to their death. And so there's been a real hesitancy. So people that realize this, they often don't want to put people in a control group who are really interested. But Ornish was the first one to say, look, the scientific community is not going to take this seriously unless we do a proper studies. And that's what was that was the game changer. It was not that the science was different, but all of a sudden we have randomized controlled trials, and he followed people up for 4 years, and there's been subsequent trials. He also did smoking cessation and exercise and stress management.
This was in the 90s.
So this was right. So this is in the 90s.
And since then?
And so since then there've been more trials, and then people have done studies just on the dietary component. So we know it's not actually just the stress management and these other things. It is indeed just changing people's diet, randomize people into different groups, and we can reverse diabetes. So the studies have been done.
People don't recognize them. They're not big enough.
See, that is a very the not big enough comes from this it's an experience. So most doctors are used to seeing studies on thousands of people, right? Why? Because they're financed by drug companies. And the drugs are so ineffective. You need literally thousands of people to show a statistically significant benefit. So if you drop people's blood pressure 2 millimeters mercury from like 140 to 138, right? Now, there's a random flux. You get your blood pressure every day, you know, goes up and down a little bit. So to actually prove that the drug really does work, right, you have to have 10,000 people. These studies on blood pressure medications have randomized 10,000 people and so then you can show statistically significant that, yes, indeed, there's actually a 2 millimeter drop. And so that's what we're used to seeing. The effects are so small, you need these massive studies. However, the bigger the effect is, the fewer people you need to show it. So when Louis Pasteur invented the rabies vaccine, and some kid, I forget the kid's name, came to him with rabies, at that point in history, no one had ever survived rabies. The fatality rate was 100%. He gave the kid his rabies vaccine and didn't die. First person in history not to die of rabies. It went from a 100% fatality rate to a 0% fatality rate. All right? Changed the face of medicine, one study subject. There was an N of one. How big was that study? One person. All of medicine changed. You're going to randomize people to, no, you don't get the rabies vaccine and you get the rabies vaccine. We're going to split you up. The next 10 people come to the office, 5 this way, 5 this way. Knowing that those 5 are going to die, right? No, change the face of medicine. One person, right? So when you have, so if you claim to have a magic wand and you wave it over 3 pigs and they sprout wings and fly away, right? And someone says, yeah, okay, if you had 100 pigs, fine, I'll believe you have a magic wand. But 3 pigs, they just flew away. What are you, right? When the effect is that large, you can show these dramatic results with very few people. And we're talking about not just treating disease, we're reversing disease. You can see these what's called angiography. We actually see the lumen of the arteries actually get bigger. You inject a dye. You can see the atherosclerotic plaque that's squeezing off the blood flow of the artery actually dissolve away, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery. You can see it black and white right in front of you. The standard, the control group, which was randomized to do whatever your doctor tells you. That was the control group, right? Whatever your doctor's telling you, whatever they tell you to eat, whatever drugs you tell you, that's your control group. And then, or you're randomized to here, eat this way. And the control group got worse. Just that's what you do with chronic disease. You get worse, and you die. And 82% of the interventional trial, the plant-based diet and lifestyle group, got better.
Okay, so you don't need the numbers because it's plain and simple, and the numbers are funded by companies that it's not in their interest to go with the plant-based diet. So that's what you're saying. Okay.
And so, right, how big of a study do you need? And what are the sides? And the reason we want to be the reason the bar is super high, because pills and procedures kill people. So in the States, 106,000 Americans die from adverse side effects from drugs. This is not mistakes or overprescriptions or overdoses. We're talking, as prescribed, 106,000 Americans lose their lives. That's the 6th leading cause of death is doctors in the States. All right, so when we know that drugs kill people, we want the benefits to outweigh the risks. We want massive studies proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the benefits actually outweigh the risks. Okay, but when I come and say, eat some broccoli, what kind of evidence? I mean, what's the bar? Okay, what if, the study wasn't randomized properly. Maybe the benefits of broccoli really aren't as high as the science shows, right? Okay, what's the downside, right? I mean, it's like, oh, well, yeah, if people all of a sudden started eating broccoli, what would happen? They just get healthier for some other, even if it didn't. So when people come to me with some disease I've never heard about, or some rare genetic, and they say, does a plant-based diet help with this? I say, I don't know. I don't know. But look, if you have one disease, the last thing you want is 2 diseases, right? You still want to eat healthy. It's like, does stopping smoking help with this weird disease X? I don't know, but you still want to stop smoking. You don't want lung cancer and disease X, right? I mean, we're talking about healthy, simple, safe, side effect-free solutions. And so people should just do it. Now, having said that, the risk is if you are on blood sugar lowering medications or blood pressure lowering medications, and you all of a sudden treat the cause by dramatically improving your diet, you can become overtreated Very fast. So you're all of a sudden your blood sugars can drop too low. Your blood pressure can drop too low. I mean, you can't have normal blood pressures on blood pressure medications. You'll drop your, you'll get dizzy, fall over, hit your head. I mean, it can be serious. So you have to do this under medical supervision. Your doctor has to wean you off these medications as your body gets better. As your diabetes goes away, you need less and less and less and less insulin until ideally you're off insulin altogether.
Okay.
As a
That's the
type 2
broccoli
diabetic.
disclaimer we just got.
That's the broccoli disclaimer.
Okay, fair enough. Now, tell me, you put out thousands and thousands of videos. You've got your .org site. You tour the world putting on that suit and tie and speaking about this stuff. You're obviously super passionate. It's really hard to get this message to people. What makes Michael tick?
Look, if my grandma didn't have to die like that, no one's grandma has to die like that, right? I mean, it's just like, it's the injustice, right? It's like, and that's often what I get from patients who realize. So they're skeptical at first. Okay, I'll try this crazy diet you're telling me to put on. Then all of a sudden, they call me from the ER because their blood pressures have dropped too rapidly, and I have to and all of a sudden they're off their medication. They thought be on it for the rest of their life. They were losing sensation in their feet. They saw some horrible things happen to their relatives dying from diabetes, and all of a sudden they don't have diabetes anymore. And at first there's this tremendous relief. I'm going to live this long, happy life. I'm not going to end up on dialysis. I'm going to see my kids grow up, and then the anger sets in, and then it's like, why didn't anyone tell me about this? Why didn't my doctor tell me this? Are you saying that my aunt didn't have to die? Are you saying that, that's the anger I felt since I learned. I mean, so 1990, here it is, published in the best medical journals in the world, yet, so I thought that was it, there it is. My family knew about it, but here it is, now everybody will change. Nothing. And so wait a second.
30 years almost.
If the cure to our number one, number two killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients, but just didn't have a corporate budget to drive its promotion? That's why I do what I do. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I practice the type of medicine I do today.
Before we started, we were talking about this television show called The Nick, which was produced by Steven Soderbergh, very famous director. And it's 1900. It's in New York City, and the Nick is the Knickerbocker, this hospital. And they're practicing medicine, which I think is a time there was quite a boost in technology when it came to anesthetics and drugs. But at the same time, people didn't know a lot of information, and the doctors were probably really like God complexes, and people would go and trust. And we saw amazing breakthroughs, but we also saw them doing really crazy things too. And when I look at that show, I think, oh, what a bunch of twisted people they were. And then when I listen to you, I think we must all be as twisted, as in not recognizing some facts in front of us and still going on with these antiquated assumptions. And I'm wondering what you think of that.
So there is this revolution in medicine called evidence-based medicine. I mean, there's this real push towards evidence-based medicine. And I think that, and you take a step back and say, wait, what was it before? like, wait a second, why does there not have to be an evidence-based chemistry, or an evidence-based architecture, or an evidence-based, where one person says, I think we should make bridges out of styrofoam, and someone else says, I think we should make bridges out of whatever. No, there's actual science. We can actually make our decisions based on, experimental proof. And the fact that there needs to be something called evidence-based medicine says everything you need to know about the sorry state of medical care. For centuries, we were bloodletting. We were bleeding people, giving people leeches, giving people mercury, these horrible things. Why? Because some Galen or some famous doctor in history said, oh, we should do this for people. And so everyone said, in fact, crazy, we didn't even know basics of anatomy because some strong person said, oh, yeah, the heart pumps air throughout the body. And we said, oh, okay. Instead of actually, doing an autopsy and be like, guess what? And we're talking about the healing profession. We're talking about the most important. If we want anything to be based on evidence, right? Shouldn't it be healthcare? Shouldn't it be literally life and death decisions? And so there's this realization that much of what doctors do really doesn't have an evidence base. In fact, so what you do is you do these practice surveys. And so your your likelihood of having a cesarean section birth, for example, dramatically. If you're having a kid in Connecticut, it's dramatically different and it's just based on that's what doctors did in that area. That's what doctors, the hospital, this is what we do a lot of cesarean sections, or we do this kind of surgery versus this kind of surgery, and so you see these dramatic 100-fold rates in, in various surgeries and medications. And it's just because, well, that's just kind of local tradition. Or that it's like, well, wait a second. I mean, well, what should we be doing? And what's the evidence? And then shouldn't we be somehow disseminating this evidence so we can actually make these decisions? So there's this revolution in medicine that's slowly saying, no, let's actually see not just give whatever medication that the drug company wants to say, but let's actually do a comparison study between this new drug with the best leading drug today. The drug companies don't do that. They compare their new drug to placebo. That's all you have to do to get FDA approval. You have to show your drug works better than nothing. You do not have to show your drug works better than the drug already on the market, right? That may be safer, has a better track record of safety, right? So there's NIH, there's taxpayer funding of head-to-head trials. Okay, let's look at your new fancy drug compared to the drug that we've known for decades has a certain level of safety, and that's and actually see if it works. So that's this push for evidence-based medicine, and I'm hoping that same push will start flowing into the lifestyle medicine field as well. There is now an American College of Lifestyle Medicine, proud to be a founding member and fellow. The first board certification, in 1 month's time, I may be board certified in lifestyle medicine as the first cohort of doctors going through the board certification testing process. And so as a new medical specialty, as a recognized medical specialty, I think that's a big change. There's always been preventive medicine. We're not just talking about lifestyle interventions like diet and exercise to prevent disease, but also to treat, arrest, and potentially reverse it as well. That's the big sea change we're starting to see in medicine. And certainly as healthcare costs continue to skyrocket in the States, there'll be more and more push to take these safe, simple, side effect-free solutions.
Okay, good. Can I ask you some rapid-fire questions?
Please.
Kind of a minute response on different foods, diseases, diet, lifestyles.
Whip it out.
You're good for this. All right. Paleo diet, right? Big and popular. Guys going caveman, eating the bacon and the this and the that. Your read on it.
Yeah, bacon. Yeah, there's a caveman. There's something that was around 2 million years ago. Right. So it's often used as an excuse to just eat all sorts of crap. I mean, but look, it's saying cut out junk food, cut out dairy. It doesn't make sense to do. Milk is for babies. Why would anyone drink milk after weaning and then drink milk of another species? Just doesn't make any sense. Great. Junk food, those are all great things. Unfortunately, so if people actually followed a Paleolithic diet, and if you actually look at like coprolites, like petrified human feces from a long time ago, we actually estimate that human beings had over 100 grams of fiber a day. But that's like 6 times what the average British diet gets. I mean, that's just, and hundreds of milligrams of vitamin C. We eat these incredibly plant-based diets like all our fellow great apes did for millions of years. That's our biochemistry. We lost the ability to make vitamin C. Why would we need to? We're eating all these plants every day. If people actually ate a paleo diet, ate plants and bugs, and okay, that's great. Unfortunately, instead of people eating bugs, right, they're eating bacon as an excuse, and they think they're doing something good for their health, and they may be. And if you actually do surveys of people who claim to eat paleo, the biggest difference between them and everybody else is actually eat more vegetables. Isn't that interesting? You think they eat a lot more meat. No, everyone eats so much meat. They actually don't eat that much more meat. What they do is they're eating more vegetables. So if that's what a paleo diet means to you, more vegetables, I'm all for it.
You're happy, okay. There's probably very few Paleolithic men that had their choice of meats wherever they were at the time. You're saying they ate a lot of other things. Okay, fair enough. Atkins diet. You went after them with one of your early books.
Yeah.
Apparently, I think they were suing you before they went out of business. Your read on that Atkins diet, because that was like the earlier version of paleo.
So much of this, like Dukan diet and all these various.
But they were doing some things
diets.
right. No. Talk to me about
Atkins. Well, no. Look, getting rid of refined carb junk food, right?
Yeah.
Any diet that says don't eat donuts is going to make the populace health better. Absolutely, right? Okay. And so great, but unfortunately then they say, okay, so instead of donuts, eat a lot of bacon and butter, and all these other things aren't healthy for us. But yeah, no, anything that tells people to cut down on junk, I'm all in favor.
Okay, but the animal proteins, you're like, look, this isn't going to help us.
No,
so
there's just healthier sources. So yes,
okay.
Pork has protein, beef has iron, dairy has calcium. But what's the bag? Food is a package deal. Yeah, Burger King says, yeah, have it your way, but you can't be like, yeah, can I get the burger, hold the saturated fat, cholesterol, hormones, antibiotics? Like, no, it comes all together, right? Where's the baggage that comes along with the calcium in dark green leafy vegetables, for example? So with the dairy, you get the saturated butter fat and the cholesterol. Okay, but what do you get the fiber and the folate and the iron and the potassium, all this stuff that you may be missing from getting. So the baggage that comes along with these same components in whole healthy plant foods is the bonus rather than the baggage. And so as a protein package, right, the healthiest sources are obviously the ones where you get all the good stuff rather than bad stuff. So thinking foods not in terms of components. The industry loves components. That's why they can take a box of sugar smacks and put now with vitamin D or now with fiber or whatever, right? Because we think nutrients, right? We can think, no, what about the whole food? You know, there's actually a healthier way to get that fiber than in this box.
Right. Okay, good. Soya milk, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you encourage it? Do you not? What do you reckon?
So the healthiest is whole food sources of soya. So edamame, the actual immature green soybeans themselves, fantastic, healthy as any of the legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils. Some of the healthiest foods we can possibly eat every day. Some of the longest living populations on Earth, like the Okinawa Japanese, eat a lot of soy protein. In fact, Japan, the country with the longest life expectancy, has the highest soy consumption in the world. But rather than eating the soy protein isolates, kind of the fake meats, which often have the same kind of sodium content and some of the other things, I'd rather people eat more whole soy foods like the tempeh, like the edamame, like the miso, rather than, again, just getting away from processed foods.
Okay. Alzheimer's and dementia, as far as foods that reverse it, your thoughts on just in general?
So there's no reversal. There's no reversal that we know of in terms of diet or anything we know of in medicine. But we do have slowing the progression. So for the first time ever, so no drug has ever been able to show progression. There's drugs that can help with some of the symptoms, but no drug ever actually showed a slowing of the core symptoms until this lifestyle medicine practice study was published. Hundreds of Alzheimer's victims randomized in two groups. One had their cardiovascular risk factors treated, such as high blood pressure and high cholesterol. The other half didn't, and saw a significant slowing of the progression of the disease. And so that is the best we can hope for. And in fact, even with that disease, do you want to have it slowed? I mean, if you're at a point where you can no longer recognize yourself or a loved one in the mirror, is that a state you want to prolong? I mean, these are, bottom line is that's the perfect disease to show that an ounce of prevention is way more than a pound of cure, right? Because there is no cure for dead. I mean, you know, many of these diseases are a death sentence. There's nothing we can do, so that's why we need to prevent these diseases in the first place. It lays dietary recommendations for the prevention of Alzheimer's dementia. You know, cut down on basically meat, dairy, and junk, cut down saturated fat, boost the intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. And this is based on data going back decades now, the first Adventist study showing that those who eat meat, red meat, white meat, didn't matter, 2 to 3 times the greater likelihood of becoming demented later in life. That's a combination of both vascular dementia and Alzheimer's dementia. But the longer one ate healthy, the lower one's risk of dementia. That is a disease all about prevention.
Okay. Diabetes, we spoke about it earlier, but a lot of people suffering from pre-diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. For people that are listening, your take on it, in general, diet, everything.
It can be reversed, something we've known since the 1970s. Now, we've known that, look, any weight loss can slow or even reverse diabetes. In fact, bariatric surgery, jaw wiring, you can actually reverse diabetes just by basically artificially forcing people to live starvation diets so they can lose weight and reverse the insulin resistance that causes diabetes. And so that's why, so there's the studies going back to the 1920s showing that plant-based diets can reverse diabetes. But is that just because they lost so much weight? These are healthier diets, lower calories in general. So even without carb, calorie, portion control, any of that counting, you just tend to lose weight because you're eating healthier foods, which are less calorically dense. And so is it just yet another way to lose weight? The point of weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier casket. Lots of things you can do to lose weight, tuberculosis, a good cocaine habit, chemotherapy. No, it's how you're going to eat to lose weight and actually make yourself live longer and healthy. And so that was the critical study done in the 70s, done by Pritikin's group, that showed that you can put people on a plant-based diet and force them to eat so much food that they don't lose any weight. That's the critical study. Randomize people in 2 groups, put people on a plant-based diet, but force them to eat so much food they don't lose any weight. So 0 weight loss, despite restricting meat, eggs, dairy, and junk. In fact, some people have problems eating it all. They're like, oh, not another salad. I mean, but no, they force people. So 0 weight loss, despite restricting meat. So did plant-based diets still help? Within insulin needs were cut 60%, half the diabetics off all their insulin altogether after 16 days. 16 days later. So people who had diabetes literally for decades off of all insulin in a matter of about 2 weeks, right? Diabetes for 20 years and off all insulin in 2 weeks. Diabetes for 20 years because no one had told them about a plant-based diet. For decades, they were 13 days away from being free, but they didn't know. And so it shows, no, it's the diet. Plant-based diet can reverse diet even without weight loss. And so that's really the critical point. Again, we've known this for decades. It is just a scandal that isn't more widely known.
Amen. Depression and suicide.
Yeah, so, when I was doing this book and realizing that mental health was one of the leading killers, so it's the 10th leading killer cause of death in the United States. In fact, I'm speaking in Sweden. It's actually higher in Sweden.
Yeah.
So something I'm going to talk about with
long winters there, lack of daylight.
I don't know what it is.
Some issues.
It's Swedish meatballs. That's what. No. So I did a deep dive, not thinking I'd necessarily find anything, but it turns out. So we've known for a long time that those who eat healthier tend to feel healthier. So people eating plant-based diets tend to about half the depression, anxiety, and stress scores compared to those eating more conventional diets. But you don't know which comes first. These are cross-sectional studies. So it was finally put to the test by the University of Arizona, where they thought it was this arachidonic acid, this long-chain inflammatory omega-6 fatty acid found in animal foods, particularly chicken and eggs. Also found other animal foods, but particularly, so they removed eggs, chicken, and other meat from people's diet, got a significant improvement in mood within just 2 weeks, right? And so again, randomized control studies, removed those foods, and a significant improvement in mood within 2 weeks. So I think that arachidonic acid was impairing people's mental health via neuroinflammation, brain inflammation, but we may be able to clear that inflammation from our brains in as few as 2 weeks by cutting down our intake of eggs, chicken, and other meat. And you say, well, wait a second, am I just cherry picking here? What about all the other diets that have been proven to improve mood? There aren't any. So there's recent meta-analysis saying, no, only that plant-based dietary intervention, the only study using this rigorous, randomized, controlled study trial pattern was the only study ever to show under any duration of time significant boost in mood from a dietary intervention. So will there be studies in the future showing a different diet improves mood? Maybe. But right now, the best evidence we have is that lifestyle interventions like exercise, for example, can boost mood. And in terms of diet, plant-based diets have the biggest evidence base.
Okay. How do you feel about gluten?
For the 2% of people that either have celiac disease or non-celiac gluten sensitivity or wheat allergy, they need to stay away from it. But the other 98%, the other 49 out of 50 people, no problem with gluten. Of course, if the gluten is found in donuts, right, in refined carb junk food, but whole wheat, barley, rye, these are healthy foods for 98% of people.
Okay. Sugar. And then fruit sugars on the back of that.
Okay, so sugar, bad. So refined industrial sugar. So sucrose, table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, bad. Increases liver fat, increases high blood pressure, metabolic disease, all sorts of bad stuff. And so we should cut out all refined sugars. However, the opposite happens when we eat a lot of fruit. In fact, there's studies done where we give people literally dozens of servings of fruit a day. In fact, the amount of fructose, they get literally liters of soda, but actually had the opposite effect. Their blood pressure actually got better. Less liver fat. So they had the opposite effects, and that's because the fiber. So sugar comes in nature prepackaged in fiber form. There's fiber, there's these polyphenol phytonutrients that actually block the absorption of sugar in the small intestine, slow the absorption of sugar throughout the small intestine, so you don't get that big sugar spike, you don't get that surge of triglycerides or fat into the blood, and so you don't get the adverse effects, you just get positive effects. In fact, the Global Burden of Disease Study suggests the greatest dietary risk factor for death in the world, it's not soda, it's not processed meat, it's inadequate fruit consumption. That's killing more people in terms of diet than anything else. We need to eat more fruit, but stay away from added sugars.
Interesting. You always think, fructose, sucrose, they're very similar, but you're saying it brings so many other things to the table when you have that piece of fruit.
Well, in the fruit, right? In fruit form.
Yeah.
Right. It's completely different.
Chicken. Why can't I eat chicken?
You can eat anything you want.
I know I can, Michael, but come on. Why shouldn't I eat chicken?
Okay, so when you say, wait, is chicken or is anything, is X bad for you? The answer is, well, compared to what? Like, are eggs bad for you? Well, compared to the breakfast sausage next to it, absolutely. Compared to oatmeal, not even close, right? Compared to porridge, not even close, right? So, right, every bite of food has an opportunity cost. It's a lost opportunity to put something even healthier in our mouth, right? So every time we eat a banana, we just lost the opportunity to eat berries, which are actually healthier than bananas, the healthiest form of fruit, all right? Am I saying bananas aren't good for you? No, but I'm saying, look, if you have a choice, it would be better to put the berries on your cereal than to put the bananas. Oh, okay. And so the same thing with it. So is chicken good compared to bacon? Absolutely, chicken is good. I'd rather you have a chicken sandwich than a ham sandwich, right? This is a processed meat, right? But are there healthier options still? Absolutely, right? So instead of chicken fajitas, have some vegetable fajitas. I mean, then you're getting away from the disease-promoting compounds in chicken, like saturated fat and cholesterol, and getting all the disease-preventing components, right? And what are people really lacking in this society? So in the States, 97% of Americans don't even reach the recommended minimum daily intake of fiber. 98% of Americans don't even reach the recommended minimum daily intake of potassium, because 98% of Americans don't eat enough plants, right? So we're eating potassium deficient diets, fiber deficient diets, vitamin C deficient diets. And some people say, where do you get your proteins? Like, where do you get your fiber? We're actually getting probably about twice the amount of protein we actually need. But I mean, the real deficiencies, we're not getting enough of what's found in these whole healthy plant foods. And so that combination, there's some foods that are healthier than others. Again, it's a matter of quantity, right? If you go and eat something like chicken, use it as a condiment, as a flavoring, right? Not as like the big center hunk, right? So in the traditional Asian diet, right, meat is used more as kind of a flavoring condiment, not as the kind of the big chunk in the middle of the plate. And in fact, if you look at, the USDA, the latest recommendations certainly getting better, where they say half your plate should be fruits and vegetables, and then the other half split between whole grains and the protein group, which includes beans, and talk about how beans actually belong both to the vegetable and the protein group, because they have all the stuff that you'd like to see from meat, like the iron and the zinc and the protein, but has all this great stuff found in the vegetable kingdom, like the potassium and the fiber. So you get the best of both worlds when you eat beans, like beans for breakfast, like I had today.
Amazing, right? Go British. Ketogenic diet, it's all the rage. Everyone's talking about it. How do you feel about that? Yeah,
so I mean, if you think about it, I mean, it's like the opposite of what one would propose for a healthy diet, right? It's removing all the healthiest foods from your diet and eating some of the unhealthy foods. I mean, not completely, like an avocado would be a healthy, nuts or high-fat foods are healthy, but almost anything else someone's eating a ketogenic diet would be, I mean, it's among the worst possible diets. Now, people say, well, wait a second, doesn't, I read a study that, they took these case series where the pediatric brain tumors, put these kids on a ketogenic diet, and their brain tumors, okay, and that's actually
Lyme disease. It seems to have some things.
But just because it's good, that's like saying, chemotherapy can be good for cancer. So even though I don't have cancer, I'm just gonna have some chemotherapy every day. Why not? Just because it's good for treating disease doesn't mean it's good for healthy people, right? So ketogenic diet does have a role to play in intractable pediatric epilepsy. Can really screw it. Just like electroshock therapy can help sometimes in suicidal depression. Electroshock therapy can be beneficial.
Terrible analogy to make.
No, it actually helps people. Right, it is a therapeutic thing. So therefore, I'm going to just ECT every day just for the heck of it. Right?
All right.
That doesn't make any sense.
So ketogenic, you don't like, because a lot of times they're consuming, and been back to those bad animal proteins. It's just going to hurt them.
They're just eating lousy diets.
And they might be confused by some short-term benefits of that ketosis.
Lose weight. They lose a huge amount of water weight at the beginning, because you lose all your glycogen, which carries a lot of water. So you see this amazing weight loss. You're like, oh, this is awesome. But again, goal is not to fit in your skinnier casket.
Okay, not the skinnier casket. I love it. Let me ask you some questions about Dr. Greger. I want to know some of your own personal success secrets, because you've been doing this for a while. You seem to have an abundance of energy. You're pretty damn good on social media. You just did a YouTube live here, which is great as well. But just some questions for you. First of all, just about success. When you think about the word success and who is successful in your mind, alive or dead, what's that person that comes to mind?
I think, to me, kind of my heroes are heroes of science. I mean, heroes of, so it's the Galileos of the world who said, regardless of what society says, there's actual kind of empirical proof of X, Y, and Z. And actually, in his case, it's a bad example because he kind of made up a lot of his data, it appears. And he actually was, he's lionized because he was right, but in fact, Newton made up some stuff too. But again, they were all right. And so we kind of forgive them for some of their data fraud. But I mean, these were the people that stood up for the evidence, despite what social convention was, despite what religious convention was, and out of this, and one hopes out of this kind of, I don't know, sense of humanity. I guess there's some scientists that, like, I remember there's a interview with a guy who invented Prozac, right? And he was asked, like, well, what do you feel about, all the people you're helping, having invented it? He was just like, I thought it was kind of a fun thing to tinker with in the lab. It was just kind of an interesting problem. Like, he didn't even think about it. It didn't occur to him. And it turns out these SSRI antidepressants aren't so great once you actually look at all the data that the drug companies have quietly shelved with the publication bias. But, so so it's not science for science sake, but for those who really want to get a better understanding of the world so they can help their fellow man. Those are who I look up to.
Okay. Personal habit that when you took it on in your life, you noticed a big change in everything about your life, the quality of your life. What's that one thing that you do every day?
Yeah.
Or when you started doing X, Y, and Z, you noticed that, man, my life is better.
So here I was, the hypocrite. Here I am telling people to eat and live healthily, but I wasn't getting exercise. And that's because I just was so driven to, I can't jog and type at the same time. And so it's like a lost opportunity to actually get this work out into the world. And so then I discovered treadmill desks. So I walk while I work, and so end up actually walking like 17 miles a day. It was like 27 kilometers or so.
Every day?
Every day. Well, when I'm home and not sitting on my butt in an airplane somewhere. But, when I'm home, actually I have control over my life. And it's really slow. It's just a few, it's like 2.5 miles an hour. But just so I can still type. But you'd be amazed, I don't know, if you talk to somebody while you're walking or something, it's like 40 minutes go by. You don't even you forget that you're walking, because you're deeply engrossed in the conversation. You're like, I just walked 40 minutes, right? And it's the same kind of thing. Like you get lost in your work, you don't even realize you're walking. And so you get all this exercise. So it turns out that prolonged sitting is actually not good for you. So 6 hours of sitting increases mortality, even if then after work you go out, independent of exercise. Even if you go out to the gym an hour afterwards, think you're a really active person, that prolonged sitting actually has negative consequences. Now we're starting to understand why. Right. So these population studies suggest it's bad. So now I get to exercise and I get to... that's been huge, and so it's hard for me to sit down anymore. I get frustrated with the ability, and it's one of my favorite things. Burned through a few motors already, but I love it. Would never go back. In fact, I want to. That was my. No, it's just been so beautiful out in DC, and so when it's beautiful outside, I really miss being outside because I get no fresh air. I get no fresh air. And I was thinking, if there's like a screened-in porch or something where I could have, or I could put it on wheels and wheel it out on the porch or something to work outside. There's the glare on the laptop. I don't know exactly how this is going to work, but I was dreaming on how maybe if I get a spare, I could actually enjoy some weather. So actually very low. I just got my vitamin D levels tested. And I'm really low in D, even though I'm following my own recommendations to take 2,000 international units of vitamin D a day. But that's for people who get some sun. I'm stuck inside all day long getting zero sun. I'm like one of these institutionalized elderly that have severe vitamin D deficiency that get no sun despite all this. So I actually bumped my own vitamin D intake up just recently. But so there's still some things I can improve. I can improve my sleep. I can improve all sorts of other things. But I finally got the exercise component down. I'm excited. So I actually recommend in the book 90 minutes of moderate exercise a day. And so
it's quite a lot.
That's just what the science shows. Now it doesn't mean you have to get. I'm just saying, look, any is better than none. Just like healthy eating, right? You eat one more apple than you're eating right now. That is a healthy thing, right? Even if technically, if you ate actually more than one apple, it'd be even better for you. But look. Any amount of exercise is good. It's anywhere on the spectrum towards eating healthier, living healthier is better. But the science does show it's actually very similar to what you see in the dietetics literature. If you look at the exercise physiology literature in the States, the government comes out to be about 21 minutes a day of exercise. They give it by the week, but that's where it comes out to. But if you look at the science, so does the science say, 21 is like the sweet spot? No. It shows that, 20, definitely, but in fact 10 minutes a day, you can actually see benefits over none. But a half an hour is better than 20, 45 is better, 60 is better than 45, and 90 minutes is better than an hour in terms of longevity. And what about more than 90? Actually, there's not been enough people to study to actually categorize people in a higher group. Not that many people exercise 7 days a week, 90 minutes a day. So we don't know. Maybe more is better, maybe more. We don't know. But the science, the best available balance of evidence says 90 minutes is best. So why don't they just say that? They say, look, any is better than nothing, but the science says you live longest if you. That is what the powers that be should be saying. Give people the science, let people make up their own mind. But the same thing with diet. We have to moderate the message, come up with some kind of compromise diet, soft pedal the message. And with this patronizing attitude, you don't care enough about yourself or your family to make these changes, so we're going to give you this kind of watered down message of, drink less soda. No, don't. don't drink any soda. You don't have to take that advice, but the advice really is for your best health. Really, no soda is probably really on a day-to-day basis, right? On a regular routine basis. No, that's really the best, right? But they can't say that for whatever. Same thing with exercise. It comes up with this like, no, we don't want to scare people away, then they won't do anything. So we got to come up with some kind of middle number. No, give us, that's my life.
Yeah, you're the
My
scientist.
mission.
Give me the numbers.
I will give you the number. Then do whatever you want.
Okay. If I asked your friends, what is Michael's superpower?
Ah!
What allows him to do what he does best? What would they say it is?
Well, look, I'm privileged. I mean, I don't want to. I'm privileged to be able to do this full time. Not everybody do. I mean, when people say, "Wow, how can you just dedicate your entire life to this?" and it's because I'm able to do that. And so, I mean, now I'm supported by the nonprofit that keeps Nutrition Facts going. So people that donate, make a tax-deductible donation to Nutrition Facts are supporting my kale habit, right? I'm kind of, but now I don't have to worry about it some 9 to 5. I have the luxury of being able to do what I love every minute of every day. And so not everyone has that luxury. So yeah, I work, but I love what I'm doing.
But you engineered this because you
Right.
created this site.
Right.
I mean, now you've got books and things like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
so it's funny so people that know me long enough, right? That people, so way before the Dr.
Before
Greger,
Oprah.
before Dr.
Well,
right,
after Oprah.
right, was, so just to kind of, so I don't get a big head, put me in my place, So I like to think that I'm doing what I'm doing out of compassion, out of helping my fellow human being, reducing suffering in the world, and just fighting injustice like my mom did in the civil rights movement. Then people will remind me, yeah, I knew you in high school, and before you even heard of, before Dean Ornish came out and stuff like that, you were obsessing. I used to do math puzzles, and I get absolutely obsessed and stay up all day working on math puzzles, and so this obsessive kind of workaholic, work all day solving problems. Oh, come on. That was not out of compassion. So it's just kind of, I think, part of my personality, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I was kind of, right. So it's not like but now I just happen to use that obsessiveness in a something that actually benefits humanity.
Okay, so it
right,
started as maybe an obsession to solve problems.
Yeah, it's problem solving, loving to. Yeah, I've always been drawn to that. In fact, if in a sane world, I would be a biomedical researcher. I mean, I love this research so much. I want to be in it, but to do research is 40 years in some basement laboratory characterizing one little enzyme in your one little thing, and right now, not a single more dollar, not another pound has to be spent on research. We already know enough to save hundreds of thousands less. If we really cared about saving lives, if we really did, then we have what we know. I mean, right now, we could save millions of lives with the science we know now. And then, once everybody's lives saved, okay, then we'll find a cure for all sorts of these diseases. But right now, so much, we don't need any more science. So that was so I was recently in an MD PhD program, medical science training program, to do biomedical research, thinking I'd kind of do it all. I'd have a practice, I'd do research, but then I realized, no, I mean, the world is burning. I mean, people are dying from these preventable, arrestable, reversible diseases. People just have to know, and I have to get out, and I got to tell them. And so it started out going around to all the medical schools in the country, saying not another doctor is going to graduate without this tool in their toolbox. And I would literally, I was on the road full time, living out of my car, one key in my keychain, that was my life for years. I gave 1,000 presentations all over the world, and that was just not sustainable. And
divorce.
So I lost a marriage over it. But I was just so driven. And then, but look, in the clinic, how many people, I could help hundreds of people. On the road, I could help thousands of people. But what this deserved, this literally life or death information deserved to be reached by the millions. So that's how nutritionfacts.org got born, is this really has to get out there. So now I'm reaching more people in my pajamas every day, right, at home on my treadmill, than I was traveling around the world. I mean, so millions of people are now able to get access to this. And so now, so So now my personal life is so much better, and I can reach more people, which is what it's all about.
What can you teach us about spreading information on the internet, whether it's on your .org site or YouTube? You've got a huge YouTube channel.
Yeah.
What have you learned about how to get the information out there? What's the best way?
It's just new, compelling content all the time. I mean, really good. I mean, there's just so much kind of recycling of garbage online that you just coming up with new. I mean, the secret, if there is one, so new video and article every single day for the last 6 years on nutritionfacts.org.
New video and article.
Or article.
Or article
day.
that you write or you curate.
I have a whole research team, but okay. I'm fine. I'm the one to script the videos. But now we have a video design team. I used to do the design too. Now we don't do that anymore. But
you film them.
So
but you're put them out.
No, I do the narrations too. Right.
Okay.
And so, but I mean, so it's like so there's every day there's something new that didn't exist in the world. And so I can go to bed at night, and the feeling that I've created something that did not exist this morning. If I had gotten up and watched TV all day, this thing would not be in the world right now. I mean, that's what keeps me going. That's what drives me. And I think that's what we should all strive for, is being able to make a unique contribution in the world. Like anybody, can stuff envelopes and hand out pamphlets or whatever they're passionate about, right? But someone else could do that. You have to find out what you can uniquely offer the world that would not exist if you weren't doing it. That's what I've hewn out for my own life. And so then that's where the passion comes from. So now I can't take a vacation. Maybe if I take a vacation, I got videos to, that would not exist. This information wouldn't get out there. It's not that the information, I'm doing the research, it's there. And the credit really goes to the people that toiled away in the research labs coming up with this research. But it's just their research gets lost into some dusty stack in the basement of some medical library, never sees the light of day because there's no corporate budget driving its promotion. Some new study comes out how broccoli is good for you. There's no press release going out. No one ever hears about this information. In fact, every day I email every single person that I cite, every single researcher that I cite. So not only do I actually show all the research, and give links to all the PDFs so people can read the original research themselves, I inform the researchers. Originally, it was done really just as a quality control, want to make sure I didn't misquote their research but what it's become is this. I mean, people are just so, and often it's like stuff they did, decades ago, right? I mean, to see their baby out in the world, it's the light of day. Like they did this amazing research, got some amazing result. And then it just kind of, it's out there, but no, not really. It's not out there to the public. It's not out there where it can actually make a difference. And so it's just the positive feedback I get from this, like, thanks you for sharing this. Here I got all this other cool stuff I'm working on. And I mean, that's been something that I didn't expect going into it, is this kind of, this kind of research community that has come up to kind of support this, and often they can't get enough money to do this research because no one's going to fund. They'll get drug company research to keep their lab going, but then they'll kind of fund this on the side. Well, what if you give people, kiwi fruit? I had someone came to me and they said kiwi fruit helped them sleep. I don't know. Well, let's get 50 people, half people eat kiwi fruits, other people eat a banana before they go to bed. And let's just see. Oh my God, kiwi fruits actually help. So two kiwis an hour before going to bed. I mean, that's cool. And so they just do it on their own side, and it's kind of this little like pet project they do, but then it gets published and then it just kind of disappears until all of a sudden I dig it up and they're like, kiwi fruits.
You're the voice now of this, right?
It's just to translate out, but it's there. There's this mountain of research sitting there, and it just hasn't gotten out to the public. And so I'm just like the conduit. I'm just like to translate this in some kind of entertaining manner, so people will, fall in love with science like I do.
Yeah, and you are a media channel now. You now have the benefit of magnifying these messages like a major network.
But I mean, that's also the burden. I mean, I look at some of the stuff I did years ago, and it's embarrassing. Like I can't even see some just because look, I didn't have this research staff. Now, I mean, last year we had like 19 researchers, and so, well, of course, when I started, there were only 20,000 articles published in the English language nutrition journals every year. Now it's 90,000, right? So just to keep up, I mean, it's just tremendous load. But even back at 20,000, I mean, I want it to put in perfect context and not just talk about the latest study. Yeah, but is that an outlier? I want to put that in context of all the other studies that have ever been done that. And so I just feel this burden of responsibility. Because if I come out tomorrow and say, yeah, don't eat artichokes, whatever you do, then people are going to throw out their artichokes, right?
Right. And you have a responsibility now.
Right. And so I have to get it right. Is salt really bad for you? I got to get that really right, because I could hurt people if I, tell people the wrong thing. I'm trying to think if there's ever. There's examples of me telling people things that could hurt them.
Okay.
For example, so green tea, fantastic. One of my so water, green tea, hibiscus tea. These are the healthiest beverages. And look, green tea so good. I encourage people to throw it in their smoothies. Right? Actually, the leaves, right? So why just brew the tea and throw away the tea leaves? How wasteful. You wouldn't make collard greens, right? Drink the water, throw away the collard greens. Look, all the nutrition you're wasting, right? So might as well, get it all, right? Why process? You're throwing away fiber, just put the tea leaves in your smoothie, right? And so I was showing people how to make a smoothie. I have one of my videos is like, I don't know, my favorite breakfast, and I make some smoothie with green tea. Okay. Well, it turns out in China only recently got rid of their leaded gasoline. And so along the tea plantations, particularly along the road, the amount of lead in the soil is actually taken up by the tea leaves themselves. And so tea from China, so there's lead in leaves, but it doesn't leach out into the water. So you can make tea with Chinese tea, and you don't get lead in the water. It stays in the leaves and you throw it away. But if you put it in a smoothie, then you're actually absorbing the lead. So for pregnant women, for small children, it can be real. So I encourage, so now if you're doing matcha tea, for example, powdered green tea, where you're actually drinking the tea or adding to a smoothie, you have to use Japanese tea. And I talk about all the, right? But it's like that's something, that was advice that I gave that could have hurt people. And so it's things like that which just makes me cringe. I have to make absolutely sure. So the greater media presence I have is just a greater burden of responsibility to make sure I get it right.
Do you take vacations?
No.
No.
Never.
Never.
But my life is a vacation. What's a vacation? A vacation is you get to get away and do whatever you want, right? Guess what? I get to get up every day and do whatever I want. And that is to help people and solve problems. And it's just, I get to sit down and read. Like, I used to read the medical literature just for the fun of it. This is before I started the website and all that stuff. It's like I used to go every month and read all the new journals. At Countway, at Harvard's Medical Library when I was in Boston, I would go read all. And it's like, well, wait a second, if I'm reading through all this, I might as well get it out in the world. And I think I started like an email newsletter. I actually started as a little email newsletter. Anyone who's interested, send around, well, this is what I found out this month in the literature. It's just, and so it's basically that same thing. It's just like, look, I'd be doing this even if it didn't help people. That's not great for my ego, right? But it's just because I selfishly enjoy it so much. The process of science, right? We have a question, you actually measure it, right? Actually get real answers. As opposed to something like philosophy where it's a little more, but no, you can actually, is it true or not? Let's put it to the test and find out, and we can actually get right. And so I enjoy it so much, and it gets to help people.
Yeah. What a great combination.
Why would I want to go to the beach?
You found this beautiful sweet spot where you can broadcast out messages you're passionate about, and now you've got the feedback from people that say they love it and they want more of it, and you're needed. So it sounds a lot like our situation here, and it's addictive, and I can think you're going to be doing it the rest of your life, and I'll be doing the rest of my life.
Right.
2022, you come back here, sit in that chair.
Ooh.
We both have a little bit more gray hair, possibly.
Yeah.
What are you doing then? What are you telling me about? What's going on with you?
Well, that's not too far away.
No, 5 years.
Wow. Doesn't 2022 sound like way in the future? And then you're like, whoa. No, so there's a series of 4 more books I want to do. So I didn't want to even write this book, How Not to Die. Like, I was like, why write a book? So the publisher came to me and said, you got to write a book. I said, it's all free. All my work is free online. Why would anyone buy a book? Like, it doesn't, right? And who buys books anymore? Like, what? But thankfully, they made an offer I couldn't refuse. All the money goes completely to charity. I don't see a penny from any books, any speaking engagements, any DVDs, anything I sell, all goes to charity.
Why did you do that?
Because there's such a corrupting commercial influence in the field of nutrition, in medicine in general, but particularly in nutrition, where someone comes out and says, take this Dr. Greger's Wonder Snake Oil supplement, right? And you don't know, is the doctor telling you that because they found something that they're so excited that really helps people, or because they're profiting from it? You don't know. Are they doing it because they're making money from it and they put anything out there, or they're doing it because they really believe in it? You just don't know. There's these conflicts of interest. So if I'm getting, broccoli lobby money, and I say broccoli is good for you, be like, oh, sure, it's good for you, Mr. Own a, sports car with a broccoli license plate. No, there's just this, you need to divorce yourself from any kind of impropriety, even imagined impropriety. Like, I think I could get broccoli money and still, but, you don't even want the whiff.
It's just discipline, because you don't know if you can trust yourself. So you're like, I'm putting all this charity that way. I'm always going to.
Right. So anyway, so the book was just blew away my expectations, right? So yeah, New York Times bestseller. In fact,
it's a great book.
20 months after publication, still on the New York Times bestseller list. It was just like number 7 or something. Like, what? 23 languages now. Just the Mandarin edition finally came out. In fact, just last week. So finally, we got another billion people.
Right.
Another billion people. Oh yeah. Hopefully, they don't get mad at the tea leaf chapter. No, but it's funny. No, there's actually political. I was just doing something. Because I have like 100,000 followers that are in China, and the Taiwan book came out, and I was afraid because there's like political. I was afraid if I advertise the Taiwan book with my Chinese followers, I said, I'm just going to do it. But but it's interesting to have those kind of in the back of your mind. So 23 languages, it's just been, and so many people have come to me and said that changed their lives. There's just something about a book, magic about it. Anyway, so that was huge news to me. And so now I'm like, oh my God, there's so many more books I want to write. So that's what I'm going to work on next.
Titles of the next books are catchy titles.
How Not to Diet is the next one, talking about weight loss. And then the one after is How Not to Age. I'm going to do a book on eating for longevity.
Okay.
It's just all sorts of really cool new science about that. And then Eating to Starve Cancer. So what about what to eat after a cancer diagnosis? There's actually very little out there. So if you had a cancer diagnosis, you go to your doctor, say, well, what should I do? How should I change my life? You'll have doctors be like, eat ice cream, do whatever you want, keep on weight. They're giving no advice at all. Whereas there's actually a rich literature that actually has real survival data, randomizing cancer survivors, particularly breast cancer, prostate cancer, 2 groups, half eat one diet, half eat other, and have significant lower, cancer recurrence rates, significantly prolonged survival, etc. So there's good data.
Post-cancer.
So post-cancer.
Okay.
So what do you, once you already have cancer? And then I want to do a book specifically on diet and mental health. Okay. Because again, this rich literature, particularly with the microbiome, we're finding out that the bugs in your gut can actually affect mental health. Absolutely amazing stuff. Every time I see this kind of revolution, and I was like, wow, there needs to be a book on this. And so what I need to do to be able to sit down and write those books is to buffer out enough video. So we're currently trying to hire some more people to basically do what I do to get the research done, so we can buffer out enough videos so I can keep having new videos every day, but also have time to get these books out. Okay, so hopefully by then,
2 books.
So it's probably going to be a 3-year cycle. So 1 year to buffer out a year of videos to write the book, the next year writing the book, and then the next year on the road traveling around speaking about the book, and then back to the research cycle. So probably a new book every 3 years. So by then I may only have one more, maybe a couple cookbooks. I have a new cookbook coming out. The How Not to Die cookbook comes out this December.
Okay, that's pretty exciting.
That's fun.
So publishing is the way. That's what we learned.
Well, I didn't believe it, but books are still really powerful. They're almost like totems.
Yeah,
like
it's like a business card
around.
In a way too, as well. It gets a lot of credibility as well.
Whatever it is, I was so glad I did it, and looking forward to. And another thing. There's thousands of videos on the website, and you just get lost. It's the breadth of information. It's like, where do you even start? Whereas the book is like, okay, it's like cut down in chapters, and it's a little more, I think, manageable for people than to just like, I'm just going to click on some random video about persimmons or something. Yeah.
We missed talking about cancer. Can you starve cancer while you have it? What should people know about that process?
So after, Dean Ornish and colleagues reversed killer number 1 in the States, heart disease, they moved on to killer number 2, cancer, which is actually the number 1 killer here in Britain, where they took men with early stage prostate cancer, put them on the same kind of plant-based diet and lifestyle program that reversed heart disease, and saw for the first time ever a reversal of the progression of cancer. First time ever a diet's been shown in that randomized controlled trial. The people in the control group that didn't do anything special continued eating their regular diet that contributed to the cancer in the first place. Their cancer continued to grow. You can follow a biomarker called PSA, which roughly translates to tumor volume, which gets worse, 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 until you get a point where you got to do radical prostatectomy and radiation and chemo and all the other things. But in early stage, it's watch your weight, because it's the damage done by the radical surgery in terms of impotence and incontinence and things. It's so bad you want to wait till the absolute last point, last ditch, save that to last resort. And you can track the progression of cancer. So you wait until absolute last, and then you move on to the radical stages. Okay, so if you're just watching and waiting, why not try diet? Why not try diet and lifestyle? Why not try things that can only offer benefits? So that's what they did. Control group continued to get worse, 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 and more had to go off to surgery. Whereas on average, there's actually PSA trended down. So it actually went down as opposed to up. Suggesting that tumor volume was decreasing. And you can see PET scans actually see tumor volume decrease. I mean, that is really exciting. Again, blockbuster. Should have been front page headlines everywhere in the world, but it just got kind of lost to the world.
Okay, and that was one case, prostate cancer.
So
we don't know if it does it with all
cancer.
cancers.
No, right.
But you're saying since you have the time,
right,
why not?
But there have been studies on breast cancer, have been studies on advanced stage prostate cancer too, and saw better outcomes. Colon cancer, in terms of polyps, we can infect single foods. Like turmeric. One of the reasons I encourage people to eat turmeric, the yellow spice and curry powder, is you can actually see a reversal of these colon polyps, which turn into cancer. You can actually polyps disappear when you randomize groups to eating turmeric, not these kind of things. There's individual foods that can help with blood pressure, etc. And so that's why the book is not just every chapter be like, oh, how to help with this disease, plant-based diet. How to help with this, plant-based diet. No, a plant-based diet with these particular foods that happen to have the best benefits. Ground flax seeds, fried blood pressure, or whatever.
Okay, and that's all in the book, etc.
Yeah.
A couple more questions about you. Best day of your life and worst day of your life.
Oh, I think the best day of my life was the day that I got back the feedback from my first year teaching at Cornell. So I got the student, they pulled us through what do you think of the course, and I got from my first kind of teaching gig, and the wash of appreciation I got my students, and how much, and that was my realization that I love teaching. Like that was my like even as a kid, like when I would make something in the kitchen, just like a little whatever you're making as a kid, I would pretend I'm on a cooking show. I'd be like, oh, and so then you raise it up, and I'm talking to nobody, right? But it was just if I found out something, I wanted to share it with everyone. Like I found out dinosaurs do X, right? I want to tell all my friends. Did you know it seems selfish for me to have knowledge that other people, and if you had something I didn't know, I want to, and so I always wanted to share. So this whole kind of, and so that day, I remember I just broke down into tears, reading those comment after comment. Oh, it changed my life. I'm on to do, I mean, just yeah, and it was teaching intro biology. It's not like
and you're in your 20s at
right,
this
right.
point.
I mean, so yeah, and I was just this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so actually I was thinking I'd go into academia, I'd teach. And then instead of me traveling around the world, people come to me, 500 people in a big classroom, right? You come to me instead of me having to travel around, right, and get jet lagged everywhere. But 500 people isn't enough, right? It's not 500 people a day. It's the same 500 people the next day. And I can give the most important message maybe 20 minutes. I can get people down the path of, and so it's really just exposing as many people as possible to this message. So instead of going that kind of typical academic route, I'm online spreading the good word.
So that was that light bulb moment. Worst day.
That was what is the worst day? I had a recent very bad day. Wouldn't call it the worst day, but it's kind of ironically funny. So Mr. Eating Healthy. So the love of my life is a big loves native plants, and so she makes all these plants that makes the birds and bees happy, and I just want to eat everything. I'm like, can I eat it? Right? Grow some more kale. I don't want to see the butterfly bush. But I thought this was the best of both worlds. Elderberry bush. We grew this black elderberry. It's bigger than me. It's 10-foot massive bush with these huge clusters of these gorgeous black berries. I was so excited. So I read about elderberry is like a flu remedy, and you hear about elderberry jam, and the anthocyanins, the these deep purplish black compounds are some of the healthiest things in black raspberries and blueberries. And so I was like, wow, I'm going to have this. Talk about local. It's like right in my yard, right? And so I was like, I'm going to have like every day. And so it turned ripe a couple weeks ago. And so, ta-da! And I was waiting, they've been green. And so finally ripe. And you just get clusters of berry. And so I made myself a smoothie, right? I made this like massive, with just like handfuls of berries. Okay. Turned out elderberries are poisonous. I did not know that. See, raw elderberries are poisonous. You have to cook them. Now, cooked elderberries are perfectly fine. So you make elderberry jam and all the things I had heard about, right? But there's actually cyanide. So there's a compound that produces cyanide, which is totally destroyed by cooking. So you can eat all the elderberry jam you want, but in a smoothie form. And so I drank down this thing. Here I am, feeling all righteous. I'm eating local, organic, obviously, freshly picked, super duper healthy. All right, and and so then I'm back to work, and I don't know, must have been maybe 40 minutes later or something. All of a sudden, I start drooling, like literally like dripping onto the keyboard, drooling, and I'm like, what is going on? And I didn't immediately, I made no connection. Like all of a sudden, and I'm like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, the pain started, and I started projectile. It was a very bad scene, and thankfully my body violently rejected every last bit in my body, and so of course I'm online. And you look at the CDC website, Centers for Disease Control, and there's all these people having to be airlifted away from picnics because someone tried to make elderberry tea by putting, right, like people ending up in comas and being intubated.
You're doing this while you're throwing up.
And so I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even make it to the bathroom. It was a horrible mess. And so here I am, Mr. Healthy, right? And and the irony is it didn't taste very good. The smoothie did not taste very, like elderberry just did not very, but I was like forcing myself to eat because I was just so righteous. I'm like super healthy. And I offered to my beloved, you want some? Nah, thankfully. I poisoned her as well. Oh my God. So I did not end up having to go to the hospital, but I know all about the cyanide remedies now, but how funny. And wouldn't that be the ironic author of How Not to Die? Here's his gravestone because he ate berries, which it's just the irony. Anyway, that was a bad day.
Were you all right? Was it 24 hours?
No, I was totally fine.
In a few hours.
But it was just because my body was so smart to just completely eject 100% of everything that I had eaten. Wow.
Okay, that's a bad day. Revenge of the plants. But again, like you said, and we're in 2017 when all this information should be out there, and even you didn't have that. So
and so right,
goes to show you.
Right, Google it before you eat it is the message for the day. How funny.
I just wondered if you had any thoughts about plant intelligence, plant medicines. There's plant medicines like ayahuasca and mushrooms and these kinds of things that and there's things called plant intelligence, where we can learn from these plants. Have you ever thought about that stuff?
You mean like psychedelics?
Yeah, correct.
No, I don't know about the literature. Okay. I mean, so there is a literature now about, there were some old LSD studies, and now there's psilocybin studies.
Yeah.
And it's just not something I've looked into.
Okay. Yeah.
I do have a big cannabis series coming out.
You do. Okay.
But that was my kind of first toe dip into that kind of
plant
realm.
medicines. Okay.
And unfortunately, what you find out is that there's just like so many like nutrition, it's field nutrition, where it's just like there's a sea of misinformation on the internet. You don't know who to believe. And in terms of cannabis, now there's this multi-billion-dollar, now there's the cannabis industry, which has corrupting influence, and so that's kind of my perfect kind of subject to get into, where there's billions of dollars on both sides, corrupting influences huge amounts of literature. Where's the truth? Same thing with the sodium literature. Same thing with, it's like that's what I love diving into. It's because to do another video on how broccoli good for you, okay, that's not a big surprise, but I love to like, get people at the truth, because who can you really trust anymore? Who can you believe? You just want to know the science, and so that's what I pride myself in being.
Well, I'm here to tell you, after your cannabis series, definitely look into the ayahuasca series and the psilocybin series, because there's a lot of research being done here in London. Professor David Nutt, Imperial College, and doing a lot of this, studies as far as these drugs. Again, pharmaceutical industry has no interest in them. They can't be patentable, etc. And yet they seem to really have some life-transforming effects. And again, back to your plant allies, as we call them. So very important here.
They're not all good, though.
They're not all good. Obviously, elderflower, stay away from those. Last question for you. What keeps you awake at night?
It's all the people that aren't being reached. I mean, it's just like until everybody knows this information. As long as everybody knows, then my job is done. But all the people that would change if they knew. Now, there's lots of people, even if they knew, they wouldn't do anything different, right? Oh, they're a smoker. They all of a sudden know all of a sudden smoking's bad for you. They don't care. Okay, that's fine. But there are people who the next day, it's a very small percentage of people. I mean, most people actually make changes in their diet for health, but there are some people that are like, they learn something like this, and that's it. The next day, they're, look, like whatever my taste buds are, my health is more important, my family's more important, that's it, right? And it's those people who literally, if they knew this, the next day they'd be eating radically different and transform their lives, particularly if they're already stricken with some chronic disease, until I reach every single one of those people. It's those people that, like, maybe if I tweak the video different, or like, we've never done any promotion, like paid promotion or anything. It's all kind of word of mouth, but like, maybe we should be paying for ads on YouTube or something, because until everyone who, if they had this information, would make a positive change, until they all heard this information, I have this drive to get it out, and the thought that there's someone out there who would, if they just knew about it, that's what keeps me restless.
I was eating a piece of cheese last night, and I was like, God damn it, why am I eating this? Because I've been watching you. And I had a hard-boiled egg before you got here, and I was like, God damn it. I was thinking about it again, like, why am I making this choice? I mean, it was in a salad, but still, it got me thinking a little bit more about these choices I'm making.
That's what it's all about. It's all about. And that's how it starts, right? And then, that's, you just slowly but surely start, hey, instead of that, I could have this. And then, I could have chickpeas instead of my whatever.
Yeah, and we do meatless Mondays in my house, and now I'm starting to love the lentils. And so, it's a slightly and then you see, how do I feel? I felt pretty good that day. Okay, great. So what happens? You don't make money from the book. How do you fund your lifestyle?
Oh, yeah. So I used to have a day job doing kind of infectious disease work, and this was kind of nights and weekends and stuff. But now I am the research director at NutritionFacts.org, which is a nonprofit charitable organization. And so I do draw a salary from the organization. So that's how I'm able to keep it going. And we have a staff of over a dozen people who are working on this full time. We have social media people, and we have, so now it's this whole kind of juggernaut of getting this information out there.
Comes from individual donations from the site.
And what's amazing is I feel like we're like the Bernie Sanders of nutrition. The average donation is like $20 or something, but we just reach so many millions of people that if 1,000 people kicks in a few bucks, then the site pays for itself. I mean, then all the server costs, everybody's salaries, everything. I mean, it's just amazing. And it's like the Wikipedia model. Like, everything's totally free. But if you just appreciate it and you want to kick in some bucks, you don't have to. There's no like special like member-only site where we give you life-saving information for your kids if you pay some more money or something. No, it's all free for everybody. But if you just appreciate it and just want to like tip, whatever, there's a little donate button. And that keeps the whole thing going, and it has, and we've never at any time had any problems with doing whatever we wanted. I mean, it's just, we just keep growing, and it's a beautiful thing that the community just really supports. We have like monthly donors that just every month because they so appreciate this, whether it's affected them or they have this kind of, they want to help other people. They just appreciate having a source of kind of objective, something that they can trust in this field of kind of misinformation.
Yeah, because the funding is everything, really. Yeah. The funding is the message. Michael, I always ask everyone here a few questions at the end. I'm going to ask you, if you could pick up your phone and make a call to the 20-year-old Michael Greger, I guess he would be in Ithaca, New York.
Oh, yeah.
Walking by one of those caverns, hopefully not,
Cavern,
those kind of things. And give that young man a bit of advice.
Yeah.
What would you tell him?
Well, one of the things I tell them is take care of yourself, get enough sleep. I mean, there have been times in my life where I've been so kind of obsessed with productivity, with efficiency, that, I mean, there was a period, which I'm not proud of and don't recommend, but I was sleeping 3 hours a night, so bed at 11:30, up at 2:30, just because, I found myself less effective when I was unconscious. I just wasn't getting enough done when I was during my sleeping hours. So, and that was just a really bad decision, and it was not sustainable, and I was miserable, and so the part of the advice was really take care of yourself. And everyone hears that, but it's like, it's the marathon, not the sprint. It's like, you need to be doing this for the rest of your life. So however you can, it's just like healthy eating. However you can fit it in a way that's sustainable, that's what makes the difference, whether you're going on a life of helping people or going on a life of eating healthier. You have to be doing it, thinking about it in the long term. And I think back then I just wasn't, I was just kind of thinking I was invulnerable and got to take care of yourself. I would have told them about the treadmill. Oh, you got to get on the treadmill. Don't be sitting down all day at the library.
That too.
Yeah.
Second part of that question, best advice you've ever received. Could it come from a professor or someone in the medical practice or not? Maybe someone else where something just clicked?
It was actually really just a practical piece of advice from a friend of mine who told me about Getting Things Done, a book.
David Allen. We've had him here.
Well, that book was, because my whole life is about being able to best kind of engineer my life to do what I want to do. And that book just really just helped kind of organize my schedule and juggle the various competing priorities. And and it was, we were like some dinner party or something, and just talking to the person next to me, was like, oh yeah, have you read this book? And it's like, wow, if I didn't go to that dinner party, right? Like, if I didn't talk, it's like, wait a second, what are all the other books I don't know about? Like, what are all the, and so it's all these, like, these are the ones I got to go back and tell the 20-year-old, oh, you got to read this, 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 and this. Don't read this. Don't waste your time. And, so that was really transformative in my kind of day-to-day schedule. Because I was always like, just brewing in the back of my mind, I got all these millions of things I need to do and juggling. And now it's just like, everything's in there, its own little niche, and now I can just fully immerse myself into whatever research topic is at hand, knowing everything else is going to be taken care of. That's what the Allen's book gave me.
Probably could have doubled or tripled your output.
It was. I don't know how much. It certainly. It's enabled me to have that kind of focus that's necessary. For some of these topics, they're really confusing. Even there's whenever there's divisiveness in the scientific community itself that's not tied to corporate interests. All right, it's not that one person's being paid off, but there's actually legitimate scientific debate about particular findings. That's when you really got to do a deep dive, look at the primary literature, go all the way back, and to do that you need total focus. It's not something you can pick up and be on a call and then go back to. You really got to come, and to do that you have to basically clear the slate, and that's what that helped me.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. It's a book everybody should pick up. And he's great. He's great too as well. Last part of that question. To that 20-year-old that's out there listening to us, watching right now in Taiwan or in China or South America or in Brazil, the New York Times just did an article on the front page about how they're just consuming so much sugar these days and all the companies are down there. Or someone in the middle of America who's just eating this diet and don't know why. What advice do you give to them? What is the thing that they can do to kind of get into this lifestyle, to experiment with it, to try these things out? What do you tell them?
So, I'd give them tools. So it depends on where they were in kind of this pre-contemplative stage. If they had no idea even about what they're doing has anything wrong, right? They have some smoking habit, they don't know. Well, then it's all about dispelling ignorance and sharing them some of this information. So I talk about, this is what the science shows. There's tremendous power over your health and longevity if you do X, Y, and Z. So give them that. And then if they're actually interested, then it's a matter of what tools, like the 21-day Kickstart, like various resources I give them to help them make that transition, whether it's recipe sites or whatever. I'm excited to finally have the cookbook. I can be like, here's here's some Dr. Greger approved all green light ingredient, these are some of the healthiest foods, how to make them actually taste good and stuff. Happy to have those tools to actually make it easier, because that's really, it's not that the science is there, but actually putting it into practice, we're not set up as a society, right? I mean, it's like every party at school, everyone's bringing in cupcakes, and it's just the whole culture is about undercutting people's ability, like M&Ms on the desk at work, and the whole system is set up to kind of undercut our ability to take care of ourselves. And it's like, how do you deal with social situations? And that's some of the kind of the toughest stuff. And it's just like, yeah, science is one way, but how do I actually make it work? And so that I think is the, so giving people tools to kind of maneuver in that kind of space is like, particularly at home, like if you're eating the diet, but everyone else in your family's eating different, that's a really difficult, very difficult to make that sustainable, even if it's some kind of life and death decision. It's just, what do you do, holidays, and I mean, it's just, those are the kind of tools that people need to actually put it into practice, particularly for younger people who don't have control over what they eat. How can you, until they finally go off on their own, and then how do you prepare this food? How do you make it, affordable? I mean, those are the kind of the how questions that often I don't get in. I'm stuck on the why. I'm stuck on the getting this information to the hands of as many people as possible, and then hopefully others can come along and provide those tools.
Yeah. Dr. Greger, thank you so much for being here. I've tremendously enjoyed this and learning more about you. And for some reason, you weren't massively on my radar in the last couple months, and I've learned more and more about you. The fact that you have this set up as an org and you have this as a nonprofit makes a huge difference, because your message is purely driven by this obsessed man in the blue tie and the green tie who goes around the world. I know you're not taking vacation, because one of my students from my Business Accelerator emailed me on Friday and said, I'm interviewing Dr. Greger in Washington, D.C., and then you were coming here. We're doing this on a Sunday because your schedule is so busy.
Right.
And so I know you're a workaholic. And I'll also be very honest, I'm not a vegan. My grandfather ran a feedlot in Arizona. I remember going to the feedlot as a kid, smelling, 5,000 head of cattle, wondering, this doesn't smell right. And yet in the past 5 years or so, my diet has become more plant-based because it just feels right. And it seems more intelligent. And we have meatless Mondays. And I find, like I said, lately I'm drawn to a lot more plant-based foods. And I'm like, well, there's something here.
Cool.
Something feels right. And the plant medicine seemed to also be telling me that in some way. That's why maybe you should check those guys out. And so, look, this is a super important message. And again, all the time I'm sitting with people like you here telling me messages that are obvious that people should listen to, and yet we still don't, because we're caught up in these old ways of thinking. And like you said, Halloween, let's give these little kids candy. Why don't you punch them in the face? Right? And or birthday, you give them a cake.
Treat.
Exactly. And so, and I'm even guilty of that. On Friday, I went out and bought ice creams for everybody. I brought back, and I'm like, what am I doing? And so people, and actually half the people here said no, because we got vegans in the house, we got smart people in the house, and I'm like, what am I doing? So even I know better, and I still have these bad habits. So and I also know what it's like to run a media company, and it's a lot of hard work, but you're doing great work, and I can tell that you're feeling this kind of human feedback that lets you know you're doing the right thing. So I just want to acknowledge you for all the great work you're doing out there, and there's these tireless efforts that you're doing because it's an important message. So
thank you so much.
So thank you for doing that.
Keep up the good work yourself.
That's our plan here. And so anyways, thank you for being here. As we say on London Real, it's about the journey. I wish you well on yours, and please come back and see us and let us know about these books that are coming. This one, How Not to Die, is a great book. How Not to Die, it's coming out soon, and the other ones sound fascinating, but it's a really great, meaty read, so people should grab a copy.
So glad.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it. Thanks for having me
All the
on.
best.